I am Darrell Brown, Director of Economic Development for Charles County. Thank you all for being here, and I call to order the 2019 Charles County Economic Development Fall Meeting. At the outset, I want to recognize our sponsors and partners for their financial support and participation. Thank you very much for sponsoring. Further, I want to recognize all of our elected local, county, and state officials. Please stand if you are a member of the state delegation, board of county commissioners, municipal official, board of education, or representative of the federal delegation to be recognized. Please stand. Thank you for being here, and you may please be seated. Finally, I want to recognize the most important people in the room this morning. Please stand if you are a business owner, for-profit or nonprofit, aspiring entrepreneur, or senior corporate business executive. Please stand. Thank you for being here. As I have said over the past few years, you are our job creators. And today's meeting is about you and the county. Now, without further delay, please welcome Charles County Board of Commissioner President Reuben Collins.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here before you. And I was just recalling one of the first meetings with the economic development during this fall meeting sessions in the early 2000s. And I can tell you how much, this particular event really puts in focus how our community continues to grow. And so I am honored and I appreciate the opportunity to share how our Board of County Commissioners have been working to advance economic development here in our county. The current board began this session in December of 2018. Since that time, we've been working together on shared goals in 5 key areas: economic development, public education, the environment, quality of life, and good governance. We're taking steps to ensure Charles County is a place where businesses can locate, grow, and thrive. Our government is responsive, efficient, transparent, and accessible. Our public schools educate and prepare students for college and careers, and we have an unmatched quality of life for all who live, work, or visit Charles County. Our Economic Development Department has been proactive in executing the county's 5-year plan, which incorporates the Commissioner's goals and objectives. We truly appreciate the hard work of our economic development staff. They've approached their role with the mindset that we have to be engaged and that economic expansion is a contact sport. They are an outstanding group of professionals who've been proven and have a proven track record of success in working with businesses and growing our economy. They work tirelessly with our business community to make certain it thrives as the county grows, that we foster commercial growth to strengthen our tax base, and that those dollars are reinvested to provide valuable services to our community. Many projects are underway or have been launched over the past year. Mr. Darrell Brown will share in more detail what those projects are. Over the last year, Charles County has focused on programs and policies to spur business expansion, investment, and economic growth. we help many local businesses learn about strategies to connect to the global marketplace. So you see, growing our economy is not limited to our borders. In March, we hosted an international trade seminar to help small businesses learn about ways to expand their sales and services in foreign countries. We're also launching sister city relationships with Mozambique and Ghana, and an international delegation is planning a trip to Africa next spring to explore business opportunities. Last but not least, our Chief of Business Development, Lucretia Freeman Buster, has been selected to serve as the Business Retention and Expansion International Ambassador for the state of Maryland. This comes as a result of a program Ms. Freeman Buster successfully implemented this year. You will hear more about that from her shortly. We're also strengthening our relationships regionally. We're members of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the Tri-County Council, among others. We recently hosted a dinner with the Prince George's County Council and discussed ways we can partner together to advocate for our shared interests. We also met with executive leadership from the Maryland Department of Transportation and advocated alongside our delegates and senator to find solutions to our transportation challenges. We want to eliminate obstacles and barriers by working together more effectively with our state and local colleagues on investments that are needed to achieve our goals. And just a few weeks ago, we hosted a visit from the Maryland Department of Commerce Secretary Kelly Schultz. During her visit, we briefed her on our economic development initiatives here in the county, and she had an opportunity to visit a local business that has been in operation for over 25 years. While we have much to celebrate, we also know that we have areas for improvement. In July, I presented a white paper on proposed restructuring of our Department of Planning and Growth Management to ensure we are more efficient and effective in working with the business community to navigate the permitting process. We are receiving positive feedback about the online permitting software to improve the efficiency of the regulatory process. Also, staff made changes to the site planning and review processes that are expected to reduce approval times by more than 50%. In the western part of the county, we're looking at opportunities to attract the kind of economic growth our residents want in Bryan's Road and in Indian Head. One of the three county opportunity zones is in Indian Head. Collaboration is essential to our efforts, and we're grateful to be working closely with the College of Southern Maryland, Indian Head Naval Base, and other local partners to complete and open the Velocity Center. It will bring together the best and brightest to leverage technology and foster innovation together. We're pleased about the news that the Maryland Airport was purchased earlier this year, and its owners intend to complete a runway extension and make other improvements on airport infrastructure. This transportation initiative is an important piece of the plans for the Western region. We're also evaluating ways to facilitate infrastructure investment and expand broadband access. We anticipate a broadband strategic plan will be completed early next year. This is necessary and important in our efforts to ensure residents and businesses throughout the rural areas of our county have access to online services and internet-based business opportunities. These efforts support a thriving local economy and fiscal sustainability. While we're ensuring business retention and growth in the suburban parts of our community, we also want to preserve our natural resources. The county recently achieved a significant milestone that is worth mentioning because it is certain to attract visitors and tourism dollars to Charles County. Mallows Bay earned National Marine Sanctuary designation. the first of its kind in nearly 20 years. We will celebrate this accomplishment with our federal, state, and local partners this weekend. We are already evaluating strategies to attract tourists to visit Mallows Bay and our extensive waterfront, and to explore our natural assets and enjoy many historic sites. If you've not already had an opportunity to visit Mallows Bay, the time is right now. I encourage you to explore our ghost fleet of World War I ships by taking a kayak tour to gain a firsthand look at this living history. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude by emphasizing some recent news that is vitally important to our sustained growth. The county recently achieved a AAA bond rating from all three ratings agencies for the fourth consecutive year. This is extremely important. We continue to responsibly manage our resources to maintain property tax rates while investing in capital improvements to continue our county's growth moving forward. Our fiscal status ultimately affects the financial bottom line for our residents and businesses and influences how our county plans for the future. Our county is making every effort to communicate that we're open for business. That was a pledge made by this Board of County Commissioners at the very beginning of this term. We understand your concerns and ask you to keep talking to us about your needs. We are listening hard, and we're doing everything in our power to address everything that you bring to us. We also understand we must be accountable to the aspirations of our citizenry. We will be judged positively if we achieve results, which in a nutshell is expanding our overall economy. So again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm looking forward to the presentations today. And remember, Charles County, we are continuing to make economic development a priority because we understand very clearly economic expansion is how we will be judged as a Board of County Commissioners. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Again, round of applause. We have a comprehensive program today. First, you will hear from Jay Garner of Garner Economics, who will share with you how the EDD has been executing on the 5-year strategic plan and provide a recalibration of the plan given the economic changes within the county. Second, you will hear from Anirban Basu of Sage Policy Group, who will present on economic health of the county. Last, we will have a panel discussion on the future of work and what that means to the DC metro region, the state of Maryland, and Charles County. You have the EDD's annual report in front of you. The report includes information collected by the EDD on various topics, milestones, and county demographic data. I want to acknowledge Michelle DeSoto, our economic research specialist, on the excellent job she did in putting this together. Michelle, thank you. We have made significant progress over the past year. As Commissioner Collins mentioned, the following projects are moving forward. MedStar Medical Facilities on 301 and at the Waldorf Tech Park. A $25 million investment is under construction. UPS expansion, $5 million. Lidl, Origis Energy, College of Southern Maryland Velocity Center, $2.6 million investment. The United States Army Reserve's Maryland Training Center, $22 million, which is now open. Waldorf Station, a $200 million investment. We are working with these projects while continuing our efforts to execute on the 5-year strategic plan. In total, these projects present an estimate investment of $325 million conservatively and upon project completion. What's more, these projects will result in an estimated 1,000 to 1,200 new jobs in Charles County upon project completion. Again, you will hear more about how we have executed on the 5-year plan shortly from Jay Garner of Garner Economics. Equally important, the county has maintained its AAA bond rating, as you heard from Commissioner Collins. The county's unemployment rate is 3.5%, and our commercial vacancy rate is 8.5%. This is all good news. While the county continues to grow its population and remain an attractive place, we do have our challenges. Retail, for example, is still in flux. I am sure by now you all are well aware of this national phenomenon. However, our mall is strong despite these recent trends. We continue to support Indian Head and Bryan's Road. I want to thank all stakeholders and partners who participated in a collaborative way to get Velocity Center launched. But more important, I want to thank the College of Southern Maryland for its leadership and investment, and their partnership with NSWC, Indian Head, who is committed to be a primary user of the Velocity Center. We have collaboration within county government as well. The new commissioner's goals and objectives are in sync with the 5-year plan. This reinforces commissioners' leadership and support for economic development. Speaking of leadership, I want to thank Mayor Janine James of La Plata, Superintendent of Public Schools, Dr. Kim Hill, and the EDD's advisory board members for their demonstrated effort and willingness to truly collaborate and work with me and my colleagues in economic development. After all, the end goal is to strengthen the county's competitive position, to attract and retain the types of businesses and talent that will create jobs and wealth-building opportunities for all county residents. Now, the theme of today's meeting is the future in focus, and what this means for the county's continued growth and evolution. We selected this topic for discussion based on feedback from all of you. 84% of people who responded to our survey at last year's fall meeting said they came to learn about trends in business and economic development. To be clear, we were guided by your comments, feedback, and our judgment. As we continue to shape the economic future for Charles County, we must continue to work together and collaborate. Now, I know that at times this can be difficult, but as I have said before, those communities that collaborate are communities that move forward and advance. Through collaboration, we reveal what do we as a community still need to do to cultivate, encourage, and support our business community, and how do we enhance our product, which is the county. Every quarter, during our quarterly business roundtables and during our annual fall meetings, my colleagues and I update our progress on the 5-year plan. EDD will not do this today. Instead, we have Jay Garner here to give you his assessment of how we have executed on the 5-year plan thus far. However, there are a couple of departmental initiatives that are worth highlighting. To do that, we have Lucretia Freeman Buster, Chief of Business Development. She will be followed by Lucinia Mundy, Business Development Specialist. With that, thank you, and I will now turn the podium over to Lucretia.
Thank you, Darrell. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2019 Annual Fall Meeting. My name is Lucretia Freeman Buster, and I'm the Chief of Business Development for the Economic Development Department. The Business Development team has undertaken several initiatives as part of the Economic Development 5-year strategic plan, one of which is the Business Retention and Expansion Program. The Business Retention and Expansion Program is an international program. The program is a business survey that gives businesses an opportunity to voice their opinions on current needs, wants, and opportunities of local businesses with suggestions for developing existing businesses and growing the local economy. Charles County economic health is dependent on the retention and expansion of our existing businesses and the number and quality of jobs provided by those businesses in the county. The Economic Development Department recognizes that helping businesses survive and grow is critical to the economic health of the county. So we implemented a business retention and expansion program in the county as a mandate of the Economic Development 5-year strategic plan. The business development team assembled a leadership team to include economic development staff and consultants to conduct research on businesses and business needs and opportunities in the county. Businesses in the county were personally interviewed face-to-face by members of the BRE team. The task force was formed, made up of community partners to work alongside the BRE leadership team. The BRE team has worked together since May 2018. The BRE program has 5 objectives. 1, to provide support for local businesses. 2, to identify and address the needs, concerns, and opportunities for businesses. To increase local business ability to compete nationally and in global markets. 4, to enhance the Economic Development Department's strategic action plan to improve the business environment of Charles County. And 5, to build community capacity to sustain growth and development. The BRE timeline shows the strategic process of the program, as you can see on the screen. We selected businesses to participate in the survey, and the selection process was not random. The businesses were selected from the Charles County target industries and major employers. From August 2018 to May 2019, the BRE team received feedback from 60 businesses in the county through personal face-to-face interviews. There were 96 interview questions focusing on competitive factors, local workforce, government procurement, infrastructure and government services, the business climate, and many more. Business participating in the BRE survey come from a range of industries with a significant number representing the county's target industry. The next slide shows the title and position of personnel interviewed. The individual answers to the survey questions were kept confidential. The interview data were reviewed immediately for red flags, issues, or requests for information. The red flag issue are areas of concerns that need to be addressed immediately. Red flags were addressed immediately by the BRE team, and this process is still in progress. Even though constraints for expansion were indicated by the businesses in Charles County are planning for change. 36% of businesses indicated expansion at their current location. 45% responded having adequate space at current location for expansion. while 35% might consider expanding to another location in the county. 54% of responding businesses stated a time frame of less than 1 year for expansion, and 46% in 1 to 3 years. While there are workforce recruitment challenges uncovered by current and future recruitment, the businesses reported a level of general satisfaction with the current workforce. Businesses were questioned about their ability to recruit and retain employees. In spite of recruiting challenges, businesses plan to hire. The 60 businesses surveyed in Charles County currently employ a total of 2,133 individuals. Businesses reported a 45% increase in total number of employees over the last 10 years. For our business climate, 50% of the 60 businesses interviewed indicated that business climate in the county is good. The business health assessment indicates businesses are performing well. Respondents were asked to rate the business overall health, productivity driver, risk of closing, downsizing, and relocating. The overall rating in this category is satisfying. A SWOT analysis was performed using the data collected. Overall, the survey indicates confidence in the location of Charles County and the quality of life. The strengths identified here can be leveraged through strategic partnership to create opportunities for sustainable growth in the county. While the weaknesses identified give the county an opportunity to make needs improvements and show it is responsive and ready to do business, the opportunities and threats can be monitored in order to position our businesses to compete successfully, locally, nationally, and internationally. So where do we go from here? The Charles County BRE program is an ongoing and coordinated community approach. The BRE leadership team and the task force members will reconvene and work collectively. At this time, I would like to recognize our task force members. If you can please stand to be recognized, if any one of you in the audience today. The task force members will reconvene and work collectively to develop potential projects that reflect the results of the business survey and to develop a work plan for implementing selected projects. A summary report of the survey results and selected priority projects will be produced and shared with the business community. This report will provide information on the background, key ideas, results, and recommendations of the survey. The BRE program will build awareness in Charles County of issues that face businesses and build capacity for the economic development to address those issues. The program will also assist local leaders and county stakeholders in working together to provide solutions to business concerns. The program can help build our local business environment with the attributes that businesses seek when making investment decisions on where they should locate, grow, and expand. The end result is to retain and attract the types of businesses and talent that will create jobs and opportunity in Charles County. Thank you for your attention. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Lucinia Monday, to talk about another very important initiative undertaken by the business development team.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman Buster. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucinia Mundy. I am the Business Development Specialist in the Economic Development Department. I also manage the county's Minority Business Enterprise Program. The county's Minority Business Enterprise Program was created in 2005 to promote the growth of minority and women-owned businesses and to increase their participation in the county's procurement process. The county's MBE program has a 25% MBE aspirational and participation goal on all its contracts. We currently have 529 MBE firms that have registered with our MBE program. Women and minorities continue to be the fastest growing group of new businesses and entrepreneurs. The county conducts its own MBE registration. We also recognize any business that has been granted an MBE certification by the Maryland Department of Transportation. As I said earlier, the county's MBE 25% goal is aspirational. It is not required. In order to require and enforce a 25% MBE procurement goal, we must conduct a disparity study. I am happy to report to you today that for fiscal year 2020, the Charles County Board of Commissioners approved the funding to allow us to conduct a minority business disparity study. We are in the process of finalizing the disparity study's request for proposals. We hope to release the RFP, the request for proposals, to the public by the end of the year. Once a consultant is selected, it typically takes 9 to 14 months to complete the in-depth work involved with conducting a disparity study. The disparity study will evaluate and identify whether or not a gap, difference, or disparity exists between the number of minority-owned companies within the marketplace that are ready, willing, qualified, and available to participate in Charles County government contracts from those businesses that are actually utilized and awarded county contracts. I have listed on the screen several other benefits of conducting a minority business disparity study: creating a stronger MBE program, increasing the number of diverse bidders and participation on county contracts, as well as others. Finally, did you know that 8 of the 23 Maryland counties and Baltimore City have MBE programs, 4 of which are based off of disparity studies? The MBE goals vary significantly by jurisdiction. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to Jay Garner. And as he approaches, I want to tell you something about Jay. Jay is a national site selector, okay? A national site selector. And he also has worked over many years with county governments and assisting county governments in developing their strategic economic development plans. And I've come to know Jay fairly well over the past 4 years, and affectionately he's like a brother from another mother. Right, Jay? And but one thing is for sure, he will not hold back on his assessment. You're going to get the unvarnished truth from him, good, bad, and ugly. And so with that, Jay Garner.
Good morning, Charles County. It's great to be back here again. Love coming back to see all my friends in the area. So thank you for having me on this glorious day. I would normally say it's Chamber of Commerce weather. It is, but since this is being hosted and sponsored by the County Economic Development Department, it's Economic Development Department weather. So here we are. What Darrell and his team asked me to do today is to give you an update from when we did our strategic plan for the county 4 years ago. And on top of that, offer some suggestions on where you might want to refresh and recalibrate. I'm also going to talk about on the front end of that what you said you wanted to hear more of today, and that is some national and global trends related to economic development. And I'm going to kind of kick it off this morning, make this a little bit interactive by finding out how much you know regarding the county. And so we're going to play a little bit of a game called What Do You Know? Now, to incentivize you, I normally give out a gift, and I am going to give out a gift to whoever answers these 4 questions correctly. What Durrell did not say about me is I have been in this economic development arena for almost 40 years. It's been 39 years, 11 months, and 18 days, or something like that. But I am also a musician. And I've been a musician longer than I have been an economic development person. I have been playing drums in a big band jazz orchestra for the last 20 years, but I've been a musician for over 50 years. So a lot of my, I have a little company based in Atlanta. And like a lot of companies, we give out tokens. I give out golf balls. I used to give out golf balls with our company logo on it. But I play golf. I got lazy and didn't go out buy my own golf balls, so I started using my own stash. And so I ran out of my golf balls. So I thought, what else could I do? And then I started giving out CDs of our big band jazz orchestra, and I started listening to them more frequently, and I thought, they pretty much suck. So I stopped giving out golf ball, the CDs. So then I thought, you got to differentiate yourself. It's all about marketing. And I thought, what could I do that no one else is doing? So I have customized drumsticks made of my company. Now here's the problem. I've never done this before. I'm walking down the jetway in Atlanta yesterday, and it was like a lightning bolt hit me, and I forgot to pack my drumsticks, which is not good. And I thought, I can't come empty-handed. I've got to do something. So last night, I ran out to Starbucks, and I got 4 Starbucks gift cards. So I'm going to have my friend Martin Pearl come up here in the front so that he can look at everyone. Martin is the EDD's agricultural specialist guru. Martin is also getting married this weekend. So say congratulations, Martin. All right, so Martin is going to hand out, when he sees the hands, if he recognizes the hand for the correct answer, a gift card. And actually, for those who also win, if you give me your business card, I'll mail you a set of those customized drumsticks. Are there any drummers in the house? Maybe a couple? I don't see any. Well, good. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and start. How many Charles counties are there in the U.S.? Now, there's 3,141 counties in the United States. So, how many Charles counties are there? Are there 0? Good. I'm glad no one raised their hand on that one. I was going to be real worried. 1 Charles County. Okay, 3 and 5. All right, there's actually 1 Charles County, which is a little bit surprising to me. The closest thing to it was Charles Mix County in South Dakota. There are 27 Greenvilles, by the way, whether it's Greenville City or Greenville County. So there's a lot. Charles County, 1 Charles County, you don't really need to do a lot to differentiate yourself. Now, the population of Charles County is 161,000, which shows that its growth rate from 2010 is 10.2%. What rank does this put the county as it relates to the rest of Maryland? There's 24 counties in Maryland. Okay, so is it 1? Do you rank 1, 2, 3, or 4? And the answer is 2. So Howard County is first. Charles County is second, Frederick County third, and Montgomery County is fourth. Now, The largest business sector that employs the most people in the county is retail trade, employing over 7,600 people. What's the second largest sector? Is it construction? Is it accommodations? Is it healthcare? Or is it educational services? Where's Martin? Okay, the answer is educational services. Educational services employs 5,300 people, which is 13% of your workforce, followed by healthcare at 12.7%, accommodations and food service at 12.4%, and then construction at 9.4%. I want you to get to know your ED director better, Darrell. Now I didn't know Darrell. I didn't know any of the staff from the Charles County Department of Economic Development 4+ years ago, and they've become friends of mine, really close friends. But we still talk to each other in a very direct manner. And so I am brutally honest, and you're going to hear some of that throughout this morning when I'm giving you my feedback. But I want to tell you one thing about Darrell and his team. They go to bed every night. They wake up every morning thinking about what they can do to enhance the economic well-being of the people in Charles County. They are true servant leaders to this community, and they need a round of applause for what I have seen. And I'll tell you, folks, I work all over the country, and I work with a lot of economic development groups, and I've seen some good ones, and I've seen some not so good ones. And this one is a really good one, and you should be very proud of them. So with that, let's see what you know about Darrell. This is the last question I have that's going to give away a card. Darrell Brown has done which one of the following? Was he a point guard at American University? You look like a point guard, Darrell. Is he a jazz saxophone player like John Coltrane or Charlie Parker? Was he the Assistant Attorney General in the U.S. Virgin Islands? Or has he run 3 marathons? Darrell, you didn't look around to see what everyone was doing. I'm impressed, man. Darrell was the Assistant AG in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, Darrell, I love the tropics. That had to have been a good gig, at least living down there. All right, what I wanted to do was to wake you all up, and I think that we have. So now I want to ask you a question, or I'm going to answer it. I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to kind of answer it for you, and I'm not giving away anything anymore. So what factor do you think is the most important to companies when they are citing a new facility or deciding to expand locally? Well, obviously talent. Talent is a number one consideration, cost, incentives, but there's 2 words that you can depend on in the world of economic development, depending on the project, and that is, it depends. It entirely depends on the type of project that you're dealing with. I happen to think that it's the overall business climate, because the overall business climate captures all of those other nuances that were mentioned before. And case in point, when Amazon HQ2 went through their beauty contest, and they picked Northern Virginia, and they picked Queens, and then they added that additional one in Nashville, they eliminated Queens after they selected it because of the business climate backlash. And so it went away. And so I happen to think that the business climate is the overall umbrella that allows whether or not businesses will expand. Now, every year, an economic development publication called Area Development Magazine surveys companies, and they ask them, what's important to you in your investment or site selection process? And not surprisingly, the availability of skilled labor, labor costs, all of those things are always rise to the top. But make no mistake about it, 10 out of 13 of these are cost related. So cost is still a key consideration in the economic development arena. Now, in all of the work that we've done around the country, the one thing I can tell you is that there is one common denominator in the economic development process, non-debatable, and that is leadership. Good leadership means community prosperity. Leadership drives an effective business climate. Good leaders drive economic development into a community. Poor leadership drives economic development out of a community. Leadership is that clear common denominator. So then what about communities? And think about Charles County in this component. What do these successful communities have in common? Well, I think it's very simple. Certainty, simplicity, and speed. What's that mean? You've got to have a vision and a future to address certainty, simplicity, and speed. And then you have to execute that strategy for the vision in the future. You have to have a will to achieve success, win projects, and understanding that widespread divisiveness will kill a community. You have to have the positive business climate, including a permitting and regulatory process that strives to promote a culture of yes rather than a culture of no. And you have to have an environment that encourages private investment rather than discourages entrepreneurship. Now, in 2016, we made this recommendation related to certainty, simplicity, and speed. And we offered this important recommendation based on the tremendous feedback that we received during our stakeholder engagement. So we did in 2015 and 16, when we did our strategy, we did a number of focus groups. We did an electronic survey that was widely responded to by over 500 business people around the community. We did one-on-one interviews. And so we captured all of that feedback that allowed us to create that plan. This was one of our hallmark recommendations. Now, I want to show you an example of the type of mailing I get on a regular basis. Here's an email I received from Amarillo, Texas, but I've received similar types of these emails from communities in Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Arizona, and the list goes on and on. And it's all about cutting the red tape, cutting the bureaucracy so that business people can achieve their goals of expansion, job creation, without an impediment of doing so. Here's an example of more of that verbiage and what it's saying. A personalized email from a conference I attended, and that economic development person is saying, in our community, we cut that red tape. Now, in August of this year, we were engaged once again to come up with some refreshing and recalibration of that 5-year strategy for Charles County. And as part of that, we did a survey of businesses. Many of you in this room may have responded to that survey that the Chamber of Commerce and also the county's Economic Development Department pushed out on our behalf, this electronic survey. And we asked them, what are the obstacles or impediments in operating their business within Charles County? And we heard some themes of frustration, but also optimism and a wait-and-see mentality. But there's a theme here. The theme is that the business climate and the regulatory process. Remember, it's all about leadership. Effective leadership drives investment to a community. Poor leadership drives investment out. I applaud President Collins and the county commissioners' initiatives now to improve the permitting and regulatory process. The gas is on the pedal. Do not let the gas up. You have to make sure that you have a more efficient, friendlier process. This comment, this person, is overly pessimistic, but indicative of the nearly 100 responses that had a similar theme. And so, as we did our homework, as we did our research, this is where we keep coming back to, which complements President Collins' white paper on improving the business climate of Charles County. I want to change subjects a little bit and talk about what my staff has affectionately, or maybe not so affectionately, called J-isms, which are some terms that we've created over the years regarding economic development. And the first one, which I think for all you economic development people here that are from the region or from the state of Maryland, and that is no product, no project. Well, what's that mean? Well, your sites, your buildings, your infrastructure, what Darrell and his team can market and help you sell, that's your product. You can't sell from an empty wagon. So you've got to have the product out there to sell. Why is that important? Speed to market is important. When I first got into this business 40 years ago, the average time that it took a company from when they started to look until they made an announcement was between 18 and 20 months. Today, it's 6 to 9 months, sometimes more, sometimes less. I have corporate clients that have done projects in less than 6 months. And I have had corporate clients that have done projects in more than 9 months. But speed to market is important because companies recognize they have to get to the market or their competition is going to beat them. And so the internet and the use of geographic information systems has compressed that time considerably. On top of that, 85% of all searches start out with a company looking for an existing building. They can't typically find one, especially in this very hot real estate market and economy that we're in now, so it turns into a greenfield site. Okay. And then incentives are still a driving force for many companies. But incentives are going through an evolution. It used to be about incentives to provide companies, enticing them to come to your community. It might be free land. It could be tax abatements or things of that nature. The evolution now is the incentives are helping to create the workforce of the future. Case in point, Amazon HQ2 in Northern Virginia, a multi-billion-dollar investment from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Okay? But a lot of the incentives, for example, Virginia Tech is building a new campus right next to Amazon HQ2 to provide the talent pipeline. So between the Commonwealth, between Virginia Tech, the two entities are spending $1 billion as an incentive, as an inducement for the talent pipeline. That's the key. That's where you're seeing an evolution of these things. Every time the National Governors Association would meet, the governors would say, enough of all this incentive stuff. We've got to put a national moratorium on it. And then the next big marquee project would come along, and they would all outdo each other on incentives. And they did that because they're being measured by jobs and capital investment. So you have to be on that front end on incentives. Product. So is this product? Dirt does not make a product. Dirt does not make a site. You need to have the infrastructure, and it needs to be under control. So the entity or the group that controls the site controls the project, always. And that's why you'll see municipally owned industrial parks or office parks or spec buildings or something of that nature. This is product within Charles County. So these are sites that you have that have been identified with infrastructure, maybe under control or under option, or it's an office environment or a building or something of that nature that's available. Well, we wanted to assess your product as part of our refresh and recalibration. CoStar is a real estate aggregator of data. And so that's sort of the official aggregator of where you're trying to assess where you are. Your office environment you're dangerously low on your vacancy rate. That's a really good thing to show that you have a lot of economic opportunity happening within your county. But if there's no product, you have no project. So they're going to move on to another community if they can't find the space. You're at 6.2% vacancy rate for Class A and B office space, and no company today really is looking at Class B office space. It's all about Class A office space. Okay? And then on the industrial side, you do have a higher vacancy rate at 15.4%. But your entire manufacturing workforce is only 1.5%. So you hardly have anybody working in the industrial sector. Your focus should be on those white collar or what we now call new collar jobs. That was coined by the chairwoman of IBM. And so that should be your focus. Do not forget, tourism is economic development. And so you have to make sure that you create the product that will allow you to capture those tourism dollars. You need to add those just as you would industrial, commercial, or office space. And in a previous life, I used to run the Asheville, North Carolina Chamber of Commerce in the 90s. If you've ever been there, it's a tourist mecca. We had a staff of 45 in our economic development department, of which 35 were part of the Convention and Visitor Bureau. So we recognized that the hospitality sector was the economic generator in that community. And one thing we knew from a lot of the research that we did was either the mountains or water attracts people. You have lots of water on your borders. Find a way to exploit that. Mallows Bay is a real jewel. That picture to the bottom right is an aerial of those ghost ships that President Collins noted in Mallows Bay. I think it's very profound. It's significant. It's a real jewel and offers a potentially great visitor experience. J-ism number 2, and that is talent is the new currency. This is the hottest economy I have ever worked in. This is the second full employment cycle I've worked in. The first was at the very end of the 1990s during the dot-com bubble. And then we went into that recession cycle. The difference in that full employment is in the 1990s, that was 1999, you didn't have the retiring baby boomers that you have now. Huge number of people exiting the workforce. Labor force participation rate dropping. And so it's got to be made up with millennials, Generation Z, Generation X, and Y. But we're not having as many babies as we used to have. The age rate is increasing in the United States. So it's going to become more and more of a challenge. And here's an example of that. Japan and Germany are great examples of they have a dying workforce. And so you see more robotics, more artificial intelligence in those countries than never before, which is another reason why they're doing a lot of exportation of their products, because there's nobody to sell it to back in their countries anymore. So, as part of your foreign direct investment efforts, not only in Africa, you should be focusing on those countries that have a high age rate, because the market is decreasing. Age rate in the United States, 38.1. When I first got into the business, 36.5. You can see how we're aging as a country too. And then artificial intelligence patents have really increased from 22,000, almost 23 in 2008 to 78,000 in 2018. The World Economic Forum says the rate of automation, that 29% of all activity was done by a machine in 2018, but it will grow to 52% by 2025. But new careers, new jobs are being created as a result of all of this automation, because someone has to maintain all of those robotics, all of those automation processes, and they don't need a 4-year degree for that. Well, let's talk about jobs of the future. So Kiplinger says that the jobs of the future are in IT and in health services. Okay? IT and health services makes sense. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is our guide, that's what we as economic development professionals go to, because that's the official federal source. They say the jobs of the future are in energy and in healthcare. Now, Monster is the HR online firm. They take a different slant on it. And they're saying that basically that with the robots, and yes, the Jetsons are coming with their flying cars. And they'll take some of our jobs, but they will create some too. So look at that. A drone manager, private industry air traffic control, that's the Jetsons. A human technology integration specialist, I have no idea what that means. And an end-of-life coach, which I do not want to be. So how can Charles County grow the talent pipeline? Well, apprenticeships, customized training, being adaptive and flexible with curriculum changes based on the jobs of tomorrow, and get those out commuters. You have 41,000 people leaving this county every day for jobs outside of Charles County. Allow them to stay here with job opportunities for them. That's your talent pipeline. And I'll say this about the College of Southern Maryland. Forever, I have felt that 2-year and technical schools have been the unsung heroes in the world of workforce training and economic development. And today they're getting the attention they deserve. And God bless all those 2-year colleges and technical schools that are doing what they do, because that's where the future is in today's environment. So, lastly, the last one before we get into your report card, and that is you market yourself regionally and you sell yourself locally. So you have a regional innovation collaborative that includes Charles County, Calvert, and St. Mary's, as well as the College of Southern Maryland. It's primarily meant as a tool to enhance talent pipeline, workforce initiatives, product, policy issues. But never forget, you are being evaluated, you're being looked at before you even know that you're being looked at. So you have to make sure that you develop and sustain the tools to present the county in the best possible light. And I think that what the Charles County Economic Development Department has done in that regard has been exemplary. And you're going to see some more of that before, but Marcia, Durrell, all of their team with that regard, I think have done a magnificent job in touting the advantages of Charles County. I follow you on social media. You do an effective job with that. There's some interesting comments on it, but there is on any kind of social media blog. Yeah. All right. So how well have you been doing since the 2016 strategic plan? So let's talk about that. Infrastructure and the county's business climate, mostly related to permitting and zoning, the lack of a skilled workforce, all of those are what resonated with the local survey respondents in 2016 and again in 2019. So, again, there's that common theme. We're always, I think, in this world, we're always now going to have a talent issue. You know, typically you could say that when there was a recession, there would be a reset button with respect to getting people back into the workforce. I don't think that's the case now based on changing demographics. So you still have to work to enhance and build the talent pipeline, which you do either from getting people to move here, which you get a lot of, keep them here instead of commuting, out commuters, and skilling people up that are already here. The permitting and the regulatory stuff you can fix. Right, President Collins? Absolutely, you can get it fixed. All right. In the survey responses, we got the surveys back in August. One of my staff members is a full-time economist. So we did not do an update on your economic data until the 1st of September because we wanted to make sure the data was the most current. And one of the things that I wanted to see then was how do the people think the economy is doing in Charles County versus reality. And reality is based on federal or state data that has to be transmitted or submitted to those entities. So you have gone from 6 challenges in 2015 to 5. You went from 10 neutral or average to 6, and your assets ranking grew from 6 to 11. You had improvements in all 3 categories, which is significant, okay, out of those economic indicators. Now, what we wanted to do too then was to just kind of give a flavor of maybe 4 or 5 of those indicators, those variables, and only the number of Charles County jobs being created in a 5-year time span showed a weakness. And by the way, we benchmarked Charles County to the state of Maryland, to the U.S., to the Washington, D.C. metro area, and to the counties of Howard and Frederick, Maryland, which were requested by the EDD. I think there's a direct correlation with this time span shown on the weakness of the direct jobs. So here's my thoughts on this. First of all, the economy is better, so you have fewer startups since people are working for an employer elsewhere or in Charles County. Typically, when you have a recession or a poor economy, you're going to see more startup businesses that are created because they have other fewer or limited options. Okay. Not the case here with the job creation because the economy is so strong. The other issue that I see based on the feedback that we got is that to a lot of people, it's just hard to do business here because of the regulatory process. It disincentivizes entrepreneurship. And so that's the other component to it. So I think we resolve part of that issue, and at some point, because every economy is cyclical, you don't know what to expect as it relates to what may happen next when we do hit that recession button someday. You have 41,000 people leave Charles County every day for work. Now there's your talent pipeline. If we can create job opportunities and careers that can keep those people in the county, then it's a game changer. 41,000 people is the size of Hagerstown, Maryland. It would be the equivalent of Hagerstown, Maryland being a ghost town from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with no one there, and then everyone coming back at 6 p.m. That's what you have in Charles County. You have 16,000 people coming in for work. You have 11,000 people that are staying here for work. So the net outflow has been 24,000 versus 20,000 net outflow. And your commuting time is still about 45 minutes, which is a lot better than what it is in Atlanta. Okay, quality of place attracts talent. So besides jobs, here's what attracts people to move or stay in a community. It's low crime, which you rank well in versus your benchmark peers. We have that in our data from FBI crime stats. Good schools and health care. That's what Area Development Magazine, through their survey of companies, asked them, what's important to you on quality of place? Forget quality of life. Quality of life is very subjective. Okay? Quality of place you can measure. I have clients that like to be in North Dakota. It's too cold for me. That's quality of place. I'm sorry, quality of life. Okay? But one of the places they want to be in, for example, is Minot, North Dakota, which reminds me of the time when the Chamber of Commerce created a slogan years ago that said, "Why not Minot?" And somebody very cleverly, right out of the gate, said, "Reason, freezin'." So they got rid of the slogan right away. So branding is a key consideration. You got to always remember about how important branding is. Now, in our strategic plan, we offered 18 recommendations for you to accomplish in 2016. You are working through those recommendations marvelously. You only have 2 that haven't been started, but you have 9 that have been started or in progress, or 7 that are completed or ongoing. Well, what's next? We're offering an update on your targets, one that will focus a lot on the micro agro-business target, which relates to what you can do now with the Farm Bill related to hemp and cannabis. We also have recommendations in there with aquaculture and agronomics, things you can do in that regard. More focus on entrepreneurship, especially with the Velocity Center coming online. R&D opportunities to support Indian Head, a real strategic effort, a focus on your foreign direct investment, meaning trying to attract companies from abroad into Charles County. And with trade, trade is you local business people selling your goods or services outside of Charles County. That creates wealth back into the community. Execute a more effective permitting process. I'm sorry to be a broken record about that. It's your Achilles heel. And then lastly, working on quality of place assets like infrastructure and what you're doing at Waldorf Station, which is also a game changer. So let me leave you with this quote that I am a big believer in. Jack Welch was the chairman of General Electric when General Electric was a well-run company. And Jack said, "Control your own destiny or someone else will." You're working diligently to control your own destiny. Please keep it up so that you can continue to celebrate your success. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to be with you this morning. I understand from Marcia that we do have time for some questions before our next speaker. And if you do have any questions, Marcia will run over for the microphone.
Okay, I see a hand raised over here.
Thank you. Very much appreciate hearing all the information you shared this morning. Just a small comment. I may be the only native North Dakotan in this audience. And all I want to say is one of the things we used to say, why not, my not? I heard that when I was a young girl. Anyway, I just wanted to ask one question that fourth on the list, I think, was housing availability. And I didn't hear much comment on that. I wondered if you had anything to share here as a quality of place consideration. This problem, which is throughout the entire United States, but also experienced right here in Charles County, and that's affordable housing.
Yeah, so affordable housing actually is a key consideration in lots of communities now. Earlier this week, late last week, companies like Apple, for example, announced they're going to invest $2.5 billion in the various locations they work in to try to help remedy the affordable housing issue. They're in places, obviously, like the Silicon Valley, but in also places like Austin, Texas, where you cannot find a house that someone making $75,000, $85,000, $55,000 can afford. So a lot of it is market driven, obviously. That also causes a more robust commute time because they're going further and further out from locations where they can afford. It is an issue that has to be addressed. If there was one way that it can be solved, we would all be heroes. And the only way that I have seen it work a little bit is where certain communities are incentivizing developers to create subsidized, lower cost housing units. A lot of it is entrepreneurial. So I'm starting to see now, for example, certain communities that are working with developers that are creating basically small box move-in houses. They're not modular units, and they have a quality of life aspect to it that's very positive. But it is an issue and one that I don't think anyone has figured out completely.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you. Jay, one of your numbers that you showed on one of your last charts was 79% commute to outside jobs. Commuting to outside jobs has been, an ongoing thing here for many, many years, usually in the 62% range, most studies have shown. So how did you ever develop a 79% commute to outside jobs? It just sounds that it's too big of an increase to have occurred over a very short period of time.
Yeah, it's from census data, so it's the updated census data from the American Community Survey.
Actually, Jay, I recall asking that question when we went over it.
Sure.
We use the American Community Survey, and I believe what Cindy on your staff uses is a different product.
From Esri?
No, it's from Census, but I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, the LHD?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's a different, and what makes it different is the source of the data. American Community Survey is based on sampling, whereas it's called something to work. Anyway, that is based on data that goes to the IRS.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you all very much. Thank you, appreciate it.
How about a big hand for Jay? One of the things that Jay mentioned is that we do have a strategic plan and we do have a marketing effort. Our strategic plan calls for telling the story. And we have a new marketing initiative we are getting ready to launch, where we actually have asked our businesses to help us tell the story. And before we take a break, we're going to show you a short video that is part of that program.
When I first joined Shoots, we had about 6 employees, and we were located in Prince George's County, and we knew we needed to find a place where we could all be together. Charles County is a great place for a business to locate. Largely, the real estate pricing is a little less, but yet you're still very close to DC, Northern Virginia, Baltimore, a lot of the places that we work. So here at Shoots, we offer a variety of positions, everything from entry-level assembly and intro to welding to the more advanced and skilled programming, engineering, and design work. 75 to 80% of our employees are Charles County residents, and they love being able to work where they live, and it offers that life balance that driving and commuting often takes away. The county has done a great job through the school system in addressing our skilled workforce shortage, and a lot of the local schools have done a fantastic job of adding in technology programs to help train and get students ready for the skilled workforce area. One of the things we've really noticed over the past several years is how hard Charles County's Department of Economic Development is working to help and support and listen to the business owners in the area to ensure that they're developing and doing what they can to make this a great place to be.
And we will take a 5-minute break. So before we bring up Anirban, we do want to show you another one of our new videos for our testimonial campaign that we're getting ready to launch. So if you could turn your attention to the screen.
Zakaya Technologies was founded in 2000. We're a defense contractor where we specialize in software development, system engineering, and geospatial technologies. We've serviced everyone from the White House to all the various armed forces. We are essentially located between 3 Navy bases, Indian Head, Dahlgren, and Pax River. So I might sound a little biased because I was born and raised in Charles County, but I do think that Charles County is a great place to raise a family. Not only does it have great schools, but it also has plenty of activities that are both kid and family friendly. As a government contractor, we're required to stay up on our certifications. We've utilized the College of Southern Maryland's courses and training to study for and pass the exams. From a recruiting perspective, it really is all about the math. There's a cost to commuting, but then you also have your personal time. You've got more time to spend with your family and your friends, got more time to spend with your kids on their homework or school projects or going to their school plays or the Little League games, so there's definitely a benefit to the work-life balance that we're able to afford. And there's really no comparison of that in your 10-minute commute to our office here in La Plata. For a company to succeed, it obviously needs a good customer base, as well as your company starts to grow, you're going to need a good pool of talent to pull from for new hires. And I think Charles County offers both.
And I want to put in a little plug for local businesses because those videos were produced by DBF Media, a Charles County company, working with our marketing firm, a Maryland-based company, Platinum PR, and Sandy Spinagle, who is over there. So with that, I would like to introduce Anirban Basu, or I should say bring him up, because I think that probably needs no introduction is one of those phrases that is regularly used for Anirban Basu, and I know that everybody is looking forward to hearing what he has to say, and we are delighted to welcome him back. So please give him a big hand.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Oh, okay. All right. So, previous speaker said, hottest economy ever. And I don't think there's any debate. The economy's been good. The question, of course, is will the economy remain good? And that's what we're going to focus on today. I'm going to start out about as broadly as economists can. First with a primer on the global economy. I'll quickly taper down into national level economic data, and then share with you data specific to regions around the country with, of course, a deeper dive into Maryland and Charles County. I'll talk about energy markets, financial markets, labor markets, construction and real estate markets, all manner of markets, before concluding the forecast for the balance of 2019 and beyond. My presentation is entitled To All the Economists I've Loved Before. It's a play on a song that came out in 1984 to All the Girls I've Loved Before, featuring Willie Nelson and Julio Iglesias. They're not saying when that song came out in 1984, it went to number 4 on the Billboard 100 in the US, number 1 in Canada, but perhaps most impressively raised to number 1 on the country music charts, which no one thought that Julio Iglesias could accomplish, as he is born in Madrid, Spain. This also helped to spawn an unusual set of pairings. You might remember just 2 years later, Run DMC comes together with Aerosmith to do a remake of Walk This Way. That song also went to number 4 in the US, number 6 in Canada, but again, most impressively raised to number 1 on the R&B music charts in the US, which no one thought that Aerosmith could accomplish because of who they are, but also because by the mid-1980s, they had largely become irrelevant to American rock and roll due to a combination of individual and group dysfunction. And I'd love to continue to talk about these things. The people who created this forum insist I talk about the economy, so I guess I have to turn to that. And one of the things I've done for you this morning is I'm using quotes from various economists I've loved before on a professional basis, to serve as transitional mechanisms from one part of the presentation to the next. So with respect to the question everyone has on their mind, which is when will the next recession occur, our former Federal Reserve Chairwoman, Janet Yellen, says, well, there is always some chance of recession in any year. Well, that is a decidedly unhelpful statement. There's no predictive power in that, no value in that utterance whatsoever. But the second part of this matters. But the evidence suggests that expansions don't die of old age, close quote. And what the research indicates is that whether we're in the second year of economic expansion, the 4th year, the 6th year, the 8th year, or now the 11th, lengthiest economic expansion in American history, that duration has very little of any predictive power with respect to the timing of the onset of the next economic downturn. That said, there have been some omens. Many of you, whether in the business community or otherwise, will note that the yield curve recently inverted. Every economic downturn since the 1960s has been preceded by an inverted yield curve. For instance, the yield recently on the 2-year Treasury rose above the yield on the 10-year Treasury. Unusual for that to happen, but it happens occasionally, and downturns follow often. There have been some other omens. You see that red line there? That's the natural rate of unemployment. It's a notional concept, a theoretical construct. The notion being that anytime the actual rate of unemployment, here featured in purple, dips below the natural rate, that triggers problematic inflationary pressures, including wage pressures, supply chain interruptions. Again, that purple line represents the rate of civilian unemployment dating back to 1975. The gray shade areas represent periods of recession dating back to 1975. So when have we observed this issue emerge, meaning the purple line, the actual rate of unemployment, dipping below the natural rate? Well, prior to the onset of the 1980 recession, which was followed, some of you remember, by the 81-82 recession. It occurs yet again prior to the onset of the 1990-1991 economic downturn. Happens yet again prior to the onset of the 2001 recession. Also prior to 2007, 2008, 2009, and now. Unlike the inverted yield curve, which occasionally delivers some false positives, sometimes when the yield curve inverts, but a recession does not imminently ensue, no false positives here. This has been a flawless predictor of recession for decades with not one false positive, and yet there have been some other omens. The great economist Adam Smith said, among other things, quote, "No society can surely be flourishing and happy of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable," close quote. Now, writing in the late 18th century, here we are in the 21st, but one of the other precursors to economic downturn frequently has been an increase in income inequality. Now, there are many ways to measure income inequality. Here's one. This is the share of income held by the top 1% of Americans dating back to 1917. So based on this metric, when have we observed an increase in income inequality? Prior to the onset of the Great Depression in 1929. You see some of this prior to the onset of the 1990-1991 recession as income inequality rises in the late 1980s. You see this again prior to the onset of the 2001 economic downturn, prior to 07, 08, 09, and recently we've seen some of this as well. Why would this be a leading indicator of coming economic downturn? Because the top 1% disproportionately own assets. And when those assets are performing well, which they are, by the way, today, I don't know if you noticed the Dow Jones screamed past 27,500 today, an all-time high, that triggers income for owners of assets. And again, the top 1% are disproportionate owners of assets. Think about, for instance, capital gains income. And the fact that asset prices are rising so fast, such that the 1% share of income is rising, may be an indication that asset prices are rising too far and too fast relative to broader economic fundamentals. And when those asset prices come back to earth, a la commercial real estate in the late 1980s, dot-coms in March of 2000, or residential real estate a few years after that, often the broader economy follows suit in terms of a downturn. And you might find none of these leading indicators to be compelling with respect to the near-term outlook for the US economy, but there's pretty clear evidence that the global economy has already begun to sputter. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its forecast for global economic growth this year, not once, not twice, not thrice, but on 5 separate occasions in recent months, the last occasion being 2 weeks ago. Here is the forecast delivered recently by the International Monetary Fund regarding global growth prospects during the current year, and I understand we're in November, but forecast nonetheless. Interesting how much things have changed. Before the October forecast, this is the October forecast, the International Monetary Fund was forecasting that in 2019, the global economy would expand 3.2%. If you can see here, the current forecast is down to 3.0%. And just to put that in perspective, even the 3.2% forecast, if that came to fruition, would represent the worst performance for global economic growth since the financial crisis ended. So all of a sudden, a lot of people are talking about global economic recession. When you look at these forecasts, you see a lot of 0.0%, 0.5%, 0.9%. How much things have changed in just the last 2 years. 2 years ago, you and I were talking about a synchronized global economic expansion, with each and every one of the world's major economies expanding economically, a simultaneity that had been lacking the previous decade. Even nations like Brazil and Russia, which had been in recession as late as 2016, by 2017 were growing economically. Amazing that the Brazilians would have been in recession in 2016, as that was the year, of course, they hosted the 2016 Summer Olympics, and then had to rebuild much of their society after the departure of American swimmer Ryan Lochte. In any case, you will note how this chart is structured. The top half of the slide represents the advanced economies of the world. The bottom half, the emerging market and developing economies. If you look at the top half of the slide, which ends with the United States, which nation is associated with the best economic performance among the advanced economies? America. And we'll come back, hopefully, to some of the salience of that later on, but it's one of the reasons that our stock market is booming. Everyone knows in the world that the best performing advanced nation economically is America, and capital continues to flow to these shores, whether to commercial real estate in the Washington metropolitan area, or to our stock market, or our bond market, so on and so forth. And so, yes, there's a lot of talk about global economic recession, and there's actually some talk about US economic recession, and we'll get into that. But that was not the chit-chat coming into this current year. Coming into 2018, we're talking about something else. What were we talking about? The I word? No, not impeachment, inflation. The great economist Milton Friedman said, among other things, quote, inflation is the one form of taxation that can be imposed without legislation. In general, we don't like inflation. It truncates consumer spending power and significant inflation. So, the Federal Reserve's target for inflation is 2%. It's not 0%. Some inflation actually is quite helpful, in part because it serves as a shield against deflation, which brings its own set of problems. But meaningfully beyond that kind of threshold, that 2% threshold, inflation becomes troubling. Again, it truncates consumer spending power, not good for asset prices, stock prices, bond prices, commercial real estate, so on and so forth. And why had we, when we coming into this year, been worried about inflation? Well, obvious. This is a nation that basically, in late 2017, was already at full employment. In late 2017, America's unemployment rate is 4.1%, and then we cut taxes. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but the notion is that's going to be inflationary. And look, I've spoken in Charles County many times, and I think I've proven that we economists don't know much. We don't know much. But one thing we knew, coming into 2018, coming into last year, the economy was going to be very good. How did we know? We didn't speculate on this, we knew it. In 2017, the U.S. economy grows 2.2%. Perfectly adequate performance for an advanced society like ours. The financial markets, you might remember in 2017, performed breathtakingly well. Not only do the major indices rise over the course of the year, but they do so with almost no hesitation and very little, if any, volatility. And, again, we cut taxes in late 2017. And whether or not you view that as good public policy or not, we knew that was going to add to the sugar in 2018. Sure enough, in 2018, the U.S. economy grows 2.9%. Coming into the current year, during the first quarter, the U.S. economy grows 3.1% on an annualized basis. During the second quarter, the U.S. economy grows 2.0% on an annualized basis. During the third quarter, 1.9%, which is the text you see on the slide. But since this nation cut taxes, predictably, growth has been a bit faster than it had been previously. This economy has grown a bit closer to 3%, looking at that broader 7-quarter period, than to 2%. And all things being equal, that's inflationary. More demand for goods and services, for instance. And if it is the case that the economy has been growing a bit faster than it had been previously, it must be the case that certain elements of the economy have been growing faster. I'll give you one example, industrial production. Industrial production represents the output of the nation's mines, factories, and power plants. Interestingly, at least interesting to me, there was an industrial recession in this country in 2015 going into 2016. You can see the index falling. The energy sector is stifled by energy prices that began falling in late 2014. The U.S. auto sector is no longer booming. It would peak in 2016 in terms of activity. So there was an industrial recession in this country at that time. No one really talked about it very much. I'm not to get political here, because I can tell you the people who invited me to speak here today did not ask me to be political. But when people think about that 2016 presidential election, they have a tendency to think about emails, James Comey, Benghazi, didn't campaign in Wisconsin. I'm not saying that such things didn't matter. The pundits believe very much they did. But I'm an economist. I tend to look for economic explanations for all things. And the context of an industrial recession becomes less surprising that industrial production-oriented states like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin do what they did in any case. Whether by coincidence or not, since late 2016, industrial production in this country has been surging. Not very recently, trade war, strong US dollar, weakening global economy. Among other things, all these things frustrate export growth, which frustrates industrial production. But industrial production is significantly elevated relative to where it was in 2016. And one of the implications of that is rising capacity utilization. Capacity utilization is a leading indicator of inflation. It represents the percentage of the factory floor that's presently being utilized to produce. Again, you can see some of the deterioration in the data near term. Capacity utilization has been falling. Trade war, strong US dollar, weakening US auto sector, weakening global economy. But even with that, capacity utilization is much stronger than it had been in 2016. And you can see that through 2018, coming into the current year, capacity utilization was still on the rise. This is one of the reasons we worry about inflation. But I think you would agree that the most profound source of inflation in the U.S. economy emerges from the U.S. labor market, and a U.S. labor market associated with 7.05 million available unfilled jobs. How many unemployed people do we have in our country? 5.9 million. How many job openings do we have for each unemployed American? 1.2, roughly. Again, not to be political, but being very political. Several presidential cycles ago, there was a successful presidential candidate who campaigned on a pledge of a chicken in every pot. That is to what we Americans aspire, chicken. You give me chicken on a regular basis, I'll vote for you. I will vote for you, just get me chicken. Today, what can we promise the American people, or offer them? A job for everyone who wants one. That's a step forward. It's a strong labor market. And when you've got a 3.6% national rate of unemployment, I mean, it rose actually last month from 3.5%. 3.5% unemployment was the lowest unemployment we've seen in this country since December of 1969, 50 years ago. And just to give you some sense of how long ago that was, the Orioles were good back then. It was a long time, not for Baltimore, that matters. Again, you can see the near-term deterioration in the data. Number of job openings is slipping just a bit. This economy is slowing. But it is still the case that the leading problem for business is finding the right people to fill the jobs, to do the work. And we're not asking for much, by the way, are we, as employers? Show up to work. Just show up, please. Because the number one reason America loses their job today is not because they can't do a PowerPoint. It's because they don't show up to work in the first place. And if they show up on time, bonus. That's bonus right there. On time, are you kidding me? When I asked you to be here and you're here, this is remarkable. When we find that magical someone to fill that job opening, we create a job in America. Something this country has done for 109 consecutive months. This is monthly job creation in America. Culminating with this October release. It's susceptible to revision, but 128,000 net new jobs added in October. It's a great number, by the way. It's one of the reasons the stock market boomed last Friday. You say 128,000 doesn't look that great. Look at the graph. Job growth has been slowing lately. We had a negative 50,000 associated with the General Motors strike. And we had negative 20,000 because the Census Bureau laid off some temporary workers. If you add those 70,000 jobs back, you get 198,000 jobs. That's a great jobs report. As I say, 109 consecutive months of job growth in America cuts across presidential administration, so you can give credit to whomever you'd like to give credit to. But over that 109-month period, we've added about 22 million net new jobs in America. And even with a recent softening of job creation in America on a monthly basis, this nation still managed to add 2.093, let's call it 2.1 million net new non-farm jobs over the past 12 months, which we have data. The 12 months ended October of 2019. It's a non-farm Anirban. I mean, farm employment is important. Yeah, farm employment is very important. But those data are captured by the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and not additive to these, which come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a component of the U.S. Department of Labor. So what I'm trying to say with these horizontal bars is that the major industry segment called education and health services, basically institutional employment and private employment, that segment added 635,000 net new jobs in the past 12 months. If you do the division, that's more than 50,000 jobs created per month over the last 12 months. It's a titanic total. But construction adding jobs, financial activities adding jobs, which happen to be the highest wage, that happens to be the highest wage industry, financial activities on average. My sounding bite, I noticed some categories in which you have lost jobs, like information. That doesn't seem right to me. I have been told this is an information economy, that information is the fastest growing segment of the US economy, not the only sector to have lost, so many jobs, though mining also lost a handful of jobs according to the data. This is, like so many other things, pure statistical artifice. It's a function of how we categorize companies. So when you think of information companies, you might first and foremost think of Google. Why? Let's say you want to know the definition of the word fructify, which now, of course, you do. You would go to Google. That's information. But Google sells advertising. So for purposes of these data, they're in the professional services category. And Amazon is a supply chain manager. So they're in the trade, transportation, utilities category. And Apple, of course, is a manufacturer. Information includes folks who work for newspapers, radio stations, magazines. And a lot of those kinds of employers have been shrinking in terms of payroll because they've been disintermediated by what we think of as the information economy, the internet, for instance. But again, for the most part, very good news here. I'm not suggesting to you that everything is right with the U.S. labor market. One of the things that you've heard probably is that the labor force participation rate in our country is 63.3%. It's a few tenths of a percentage point, a few tenths of a percentage point above a 40-year low. During most of this, or much of this economic expansion cycle, labor force participation has been declining in America. Two-part of the labor force were actually either working or looking for work. Now, part of this, of course, is the retirement of baby boomers in larger numbers, something the previous speaker also mentioned. So when a baby boomer retires to California, or Florida, Arizona, South Carolina, Arbutus, wherever they retire to, they disappear from the numerator. They're no longer working or looking for work. They're still in the denominator of an adult American. But what this chart shows is that we see frustratingly low labor force participation among certain younger demographic cohorts. This is labor force participation rate for American men ages 25 to 34, dating back to the year 2000. You can see there's been no recovery in this series. I mean, we can all explain 08, 09, we lose 8.7 million jobs during the downturn. Male unemployment peaks above 11% during the worst of it. But these men never came back in many instances. They never, and remember, to be part of the labor force, you just have to be looking for work. And it's particularly difficult to explain when you got 7.05 million available unfilled jobs, and based on the behavior of young women. Because young women have stormed into the labor force. And I define a young woman as anyone below the age of 150. But if you take that slice of young womanhood between ages of 25 and 34, they have been streaking into the workforce. Much of the growth in the so-called prime age workforce, 25 to 54, is explained by women ages 25 to 34. But what about their young male counterparts? What's going on with that? Number of potential explanations for this: disability, including related to opioids, injury during military service, could be incarceration is a factor. So is graduate school. So is taking care of older parents. I mean, there are many potential explanations for why these men are just not engaged. Economists at the University of Chicago, Princeton, and University of Rochester, who tend to be at the vanguard of this form of research, try to explain this, find that there's one factor that stands above them all, that explains between 23% and 46% of what we observe. And that factor, of course, is video games. The research indicates that there's an army of young American men who plays video games in lieu of work, enough to move the data. And that's not a joke. So, Anirban, have you come to Charles County, Waldorf, Maryland, to tell us that there's an army of young American men who plays video games all day, every day? Yes, that's what I just said. I don't know why you're pushing back. But Anirban, I did not observe these young men. I did not see the soldiers of this army. That's sort of the point no one ever does. This is called an immersive digital lifestyle. An immersive digital lifestyle. You might conclude the young American men who play video games all day, every day in lieu of work must be very unhappy with their lives. This is no way to lead an existence. The research further indicates that young American men who play video games all day, every day are far happier than those who work for a living. These video games are awesome. But it's still not sustainable, Anirban, because from where do they garner the money for their subsistence? Food, clothing, shelter, healthcare. Parents are either the leading source of support for that lifestyle. You might ask the question, why do parents condone, let alone actively support such a lifestyle? And when those parents are served, which they now have been by the thousands, the answer is almost invariably, hold up. It's a very dangerous world out there. If our young men are out there, they might do something bad might be done to them much better. For them to be in the basement playing video games, they're always smiling, they're always happy. Sometimes I hear them laugh. I'll bring them tea and toast in 15. Which brings me to a quote from Dambisa Moyo, the excellent economist who's made quite a reputation for herself, from Zambia, as it turns out. Quote, I wish we question the aid model as much as we question the capitalism model. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is just say no, close quote. But if the question is, can an American find a job through job search, seldom is the probability greater. And Maryland has added jobs over the past 12 months. So for the 12-month period ended September of 2019, so September 2018 to September 2019, the Free State added 26,000 net new jobs, 0.9% of job totals. Not one of the nation's leading performers, that's for sure. I'll show you data on that in a moment. Over the same 12-month period, the nation added 1.5% to its job total. So we're growing jobs more slowly. But we're adding jobs. Many of those jobs, as it turns out, have been added in the Baltimore metropolitan area. 2.8 million people live in the Baltimore metropolitan area, out of the 6 million who live in Maryland. Baltimore Metro, which is completely subsumed within the borders or boundaries of Maryland, 21,400 net new jobs, 1.5% of job totals. Job growth in the Baltimore metropolitan area has been precisely at the same rate as the balance of the country. And you can see the energy in the Baltimore metropolitan area if you go up north. You can see it in downtown Columbia, with the redevelopment there, downtown Towson, the retail activity in places like White Marsh, Hunt Valley, momentum there. The Anne Arundel County cyber economy, the Howard County cyber economy, so on and so forth. That's where the vitality has been. It's been elsewhere too. This is the Washington Metropolitan Area data. Now, Washington Metro includes areas, of course, outside of Maryland, but that region added 38,600 net new jobs. Matters, of course, for Charles County because many people in not only Charles County, part of the Washington Metropolitan Area, but many Charles County residents work in other parts of the Washington Metropolitan Area and then bring that income back home to be taxed. So the strength of this corridor, it's reasonable performance. Again, neither of these regions are leading the pack in terms of job growth. And by the way, as an aside, a lot of people ask us economists, why do you care so much about growth? You people are always talking about growth. Most of the people we know don't like growth. I'm probably the only economist in the history of the world to conduct an economic development or develop an economic development strategy for Oxford, Maryland. I don't know if you're familiar with Oxford, rather affluent community in Talbot County on the eastern shore, population about 600, but 600 very affluent people on average. And one of the things I do when I develop an economic development strategy for a community, I conduct a whole host of focus groups. I talk to people. What do you want for your community? What does victory in economic development look like for you? What do you aspire for with respect to your community? And when I talk to the folks in Oxford, Maryland, the answer pretty much was, we want nothing to change ever. These people got very upset when it was windy because the grass moved. So it was a short economic development strategy. So a lot of people don't like growth, so why do economists care so much about growth? Because when there are significant socioeconomic disparities, and there are two ways to deal with that. One is through redistribution of income and or wealth. Nothing against that. But if those efforts are too aggressive, wealth and income go someplace else. They hide. And two, through economic growth and the extension of opportunity to people who have not heretofore had that opportunity. Now, there might be other things to have to do, training and so on and so forth. But that's why we economists care about growth, because this is a reflection of net new opportunities for the people, for the residents. 38,600 net new jobs, not bad. What about this metropolitan division? So Calvin Charles, Prince George's County Metropolitan Division, 4,100 net new jobs over the past 12 months, 1% of job totals. Don't take job growth for granted. There's another metropolitan division that's called Silver Spring, Frederick, Rockville. It's basically Frederick, Montgomery counties. How much has that region added to its job totals over the past 12 months, meaning the 12 months ended September 2019? Negative 300 jobs. And one of the reasons that Maryland's economy is not taking off is because the Montgomery County economy is absolutely stagnant and has been for years. And that's our most populous county. Now, as I understand it, there's an attitude here toward growth. We'll talk more about that as we go through it. But the expectation is because the attitude has shifted over time, Charles County is ready to expand opportunity for its people. Creates other issues. Traffic, I get it. School overcrowding, oh yes, there are issues out there. Infrastructure generally. But this is not bad news. If we look at things from a national perspective, this is percentage job growth for the 50 U.S. states and District of Columbia for the one-year period ended September 2019. So you can see Maryland is at the top of the third column. Not a leader in terms of job growth, but in the game. If you ask me the question, Anirban, which state added jobs the fastest percentage terms over the last year for which we have data? Nevada. What's that about? Consumer spending. Anirban. Nevada's economy is more than just about consumer spending. The Gigafactory, the Tesla Gigafactories in Sparks, Nevada, near Reno. There's a big dam there, Air Force Base. Yeah, that's true. But for the most part, Nevada's economy is driven by people spending money in ways they ought not to be spending money. You've heard of the concept of disposable income. This is the disposing of income. And we do that most assertively as a people in Nevada. Idaho, Utah, that's the model. That is the model. Why? How did they do it? Quality of life. The most mobile part of our population is the recent college graduate. The recent college graduate is most likely to shift residential addresses from one calendar year to the next. And there are certain communities that are magnetic from the perspective of that youthful, educated population, and Boise, Idaho is one of them, a millennial mecca. They love it. They love living there. Cost of living is right. It's home to technology companies like Micron Technologies, but many other emerging technology companies. Why would the technology companies go to Boise, Idaho, of all places? Because the young knowledge workers want to be there, and the technology companies chase them there. Same thing with Provo, Utah. Provo was increasingly a back-office operational center for Silicon Valley. Not because it's in the middle of everything. It's actually very difficult to get to Provo. But the young people want to be there. Seattle, Washington, of course, home to Microsoft and Amazon, and the manufacturing operations of Boeing. Austin, Texas, home to Dell Computers. Dallas, Texas, home to Texas Instruments. North Carolina, home to Raleigh-Durham, the Research Triangle. Denver, Colorado. Young people are flocking to Denver, often for very bad reasons. But they're doing it, and that has economic implications. Charleston, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, Northern and Southern California, Atlanta, Georgia, so-called Mecca, Portland, Oregon, Nashville, Tennessee. That's where the energy is. I mean, a lot of stories on this chart. But job growth everywhere, including certain energy-intensive states like Louisiana, North Dakota, and Oklahoma. Energy prices have been fairly low recently. Natural gas below $3 per million BTU, oil below $6 a barrel, so those states are hit by that. But job growth everywhere. And you can see really the regional character of job growth when you look at metropolitan area data. I do not want to neglect the fact that many regions across the country, including small towns and rural communities, have been left behind by this recovery. The farmers continue to struggle with all kinds of things, the impacts of the trade war, of course, but also corn that trades below $4 a bushel, and soybeans that are on occasion have traded below $9 a bushel, so on and so forth. Much of the action here, in terms of growth, has been in large or major U.S. metropolitan areas. Here are the 25 most populous. And again, this is percentage job growth for these 25 largest metropolitan areas in America for the one-year period ended September of 2019. So if you ask me the question, Anirban, which of these 25 major metropolitan areas added jobs the fastest in percentage terms for the last year for which we have data? Orlando, what's that about? Consumer spending? Anirban. Orlando is more than just about Disney and Universal Studios. Oh, really? Why have you been there? It's mostly that. It's mostly that. Notice that all the markets in the left-hand column, the faster growing markets, in terms of percentage job growth, are in the South and the West. Orlando South, Seattle West, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio South, San Francisco West, Phoenix Southwest, Charlotte Southeast, Riverside, San Diego Southwest, Miami, Tampa, Atlanta Southeast. That's where the population is growing. That's where the millennials are moving in large numbers. The upper Midwest and the East Coast, including Baltimore and Washington, are on that right-hand column. Interestingly, Baltimore, which just beat New England, it just ranks the best among the 5 large East Coast or Northeastern markets. Baltimore added jobs faster than Boston, Washington, New York, and Philly. Predictably, bringing up the rear are 3 Midwestern markets. Because if I tell you the U.S. economic slowdown that we've observed recently is driven by 2 things in particular, a slowdown in manufacturing activity, with manufacturing on the verge of being in recession as a segment, if it's not already, and agriculture, in part because of the trade wars. It shouldn't surprise you that the upper Midwest would rank toward the bottom. Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis. Minneapolis actually losing as metropolitan area jobs over the last 12 months. Minneapolis is a fine economy, don't get me wrong. They're home to companies like Best Buy, Target, 3M, General Mills, U.S. Bank, United Health. But the upper Midwest has been hit hard by the slowdown in industrial production and by what's going on in agriculture. But for the most part, it's been a story of job growth in major metropolitan areas for a long, long time. So when you look at unemployment rates for these 25 large metropolitan areas, they're low everywhere. I mean, the highest is in the Detroit metro. It's at 4.1% as of September. That's low. Many economists would consider that full employment. And that's the highest unemployment rate among these metropolitan areas. Many of them have unemployment rates below 3%. That's where the challenge has been. And predictably, when you have 7.05 million available job openings crashing up against 3.6% unemployment, you have wage inflation. So no surprise, wages are rising at their fastest pace in about a decade. Here's Maryland unemployment rates by county. And there's Charles County sitting there pretty at 3.5% unemployment. So with all that, you get faster wage growth. That's what it took me a long time to get to this punchline, but there it is. And this section of the presentation is about inflation. This is one of the reasons we were worried about inflation. We're right to be worried about inflation. We thought there'd be more wage pressure this year, and there has been. That's the point. I have limited time, so I probably should not go on too many asides, but I can't help myself. One of the things I really enjoy is movies. There was a movie I saw recently that captured my attention. It's called Aladdin. And I don't know how many of you had a chance to see this movie. I don't want to spoil it for you, so spoiler alert. It's about a genie and 3 wishes. And there's also a magic lamp involved. And the notion is that if you get your hands on this magic lamp, I mean, perfectly implausible, but if you get your hands on this magic lamp, you get 3 wishes. That's an incredible story. So I don't know if you got your hands on this magic lamp, and you'd have to work to get it probably, but if you got your hands on this and you had 3 wishes, I'm speculating, this is pure speculation. Your first wish, love or money, I'm guessing. And the Genie would probably say, played by Will Smith, you know what, I got no problems. Everyone asks for that. I'll give you whomever you want or whatever amount of money you want, everyone. So next. And this is because of who you are, how philosophical you are, how deep you are, how kind you are, how tender you are, how woke you are. Genie, I want world peace. I want world peace. And the Genie would say, you know what, I can do that. No one's ever asked for that before, as it turns out. But I got this stuff on the Korean Peninsula, I got stuff in the Middle East to clean up, but I got this. Third wish. Genie, here's what I want. I want a 50-year low in American unemployment. I want the fastest wage growth in about a decade. I want a robust consumer spending sector. I want consumer spending very aggressively, driving economies in Nevada, Orlando, elsewhere. And I want low economy-wide inflation. Genie would say, look, that sounds a lot like 4 wishes to me. But if I treat it as one wish, I still can't grant it because it's mathematically impossible. You can't have the fastest wage growth in more than a decade and have low economy-wide inflation. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Try again. It's exactly what we've had. If you look at prominent measures of inflation, like the core CPI, core because we exclude food and energy prices, and we exclude them not because they're not important, but because they're affected by non-economic factors like weather and, well, what happened in Saudi Arabia, for instance, September 14th. Non-economic factors. So, a pure measure of inflation. And based on this, the core consumer price index, inflation running in this country around 2.4% year over year, that's just a bit above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. The Genie has delivered. And among the people who are happiest about this are the policymakers of the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, the people who make our monetary policy. This is victory for them. We got full employment, low economy-wide inflation. Our Federal Reserve Chairman's name is Jerome Powell, sometimes known as Jay Powell. He's always busy, of course. And late last year, he conducted an interview with a very prominent and proficient interviewer named Judy Woodruff. Perhaps you've heard the name. And during that interview, our Federal Reserve Chair said, again, this is late last year, Judy, we at the Federal Reserve are pretty far away from normalizing monetary policy. We're pretty far away from neutral. Which was his way of telling her, but also the broader marketplace, we're going to keep raising rates in 2019. The Federal Reserve raised rates 9 times between December 2015 and December 2018. And the message from that interview was, we're going to keep doing it. We're normalizing monetary policy. We're heading toward neutral policy. The stock market didn't like it, by the way. You might remember that the period from October through December of last year was especially heinous for the performance of U.S. stocks, the U.S. equity market, especially the period from December 3rd through December 29th of last year. It's easy to forget, but we ended the year on a sour note in terms of financial markets in 2018. And the president actually heard about all this. And he tweeted. I don't think raising interest rates is such a good idea. I don't think it's good for the U.S. economy. I don't think it's good for the American people. Question, can I fire Jerome Powell? Legitimate question because it's not clear whether we can or can't. As a professional economist, I'm pretty sure it's pure coincidence, but during this next set of interviews, our Federal Reserve Chair said, you know what? We've pretty much normalized monetary policy. We're pretty much neutral. We're not raising rates anymore. In fact, you know what we're going to start doing? Cutting them. But what allowed the Federal Reserve to engage in that 180-degree pivot in just a few weeks, right here? Inflation is, in fact, the Federal Reserve has a measure of inflation that it prefers to the core CPI. It's called the core PC deflator. PC stands for personal consumption expenditures. And that suggests that inflation is running at 1.7% year over year, below the Federal Reserve's 2% target, hence justifying not 1, not 2, but 3 rate cuts that have already transpired and that were not expected coming into the year. Why? Because coming into the year, we're worried about inflation. Why? Because we have such low unemployment and faster economic growth. Now, there are many implications to this, including for the housing market, because when inflation is low, interest rates tend to be low. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about it in the Charles County context as well. John Maynard Keynes, the genius economist, said, among other things, quote, most men love money and security more and creation and construction less as they get older, close quote. This guy was pro-growth. I wish he had said people instead of men. But this guy, because creation, construction, positive, change, positive. And as I say, one of the implications of lower inflation is lower interest rates, and they have been low. Here are 2 interest rates of interest. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate in blue and the 15-year fixed mortgage rate in red. Now, late last year, the yield, or I should say the interest rate, associated with the 30-year fixed mortgage rose toward 5%. And that had a real chilling effect on the housing market. Homes effectively became more expensive. But since that time, with the Federal Reserve's accommodation, you can see mortgage rates have plummeted. And you might have thought that with mortgage rates being so low for so long, with our nation adding 22 million jobs, with unemployment so low, consumer confidence reasonably high, so on and so forth, more Americans would jump into the ranks of home ownership during this 10-plus year economic cycle. That's precisely what did not occur. Bless you, this is in millions. You see the blue line? That's home owning households in millions. The green line is the number of renter households in millions. Between 2006 and 2018, the population of renter households went up about 25 to 26%. The population of home ownership or home-owned households went up basically nothing. Despite those low mortgage rates. The only thing I want to point out, I think this matters very much to Charles County's future. The next decade will be shaped heavily by this in Charles County, in Waldorf, in La Plata, elsewhere, Indian Head, so on and so forth. Home ownership is about to come back in this country with a vengeance. Why would I say such a thing? Why would any economist say such a thing? Demographics? The notion of demographics is destiny? Ask yourselves, what is the most common age in America this year? 27. We have more 27-year-olds than any other age. So if you play a strange game with somebody, I'm going to put an American in front of you, guess their age, they should guess 27 to maximize their chance of being correct. What's the second most common age in America this year? 28. What's the third most common age in America? 26. We've got a lot of 20-somethings in our society. It makes that difficult because they tend to be obnoxious. I mean, they must know that we can hear their music through their headphones. They do not care. And they're not streaming Willie Nelson or Julio Iglesias or Jethro Tull or Rush or Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones or David Bowie. They're streaming often pure nonsense. And they're doing it at volume. There hasn't been a good song in this country since 1991. And while some of these 20-somethings play video games all day, every day, they also happen to be members of the most educated generation in American history, and all of us have bumped into the ambitious millennial. The one who, in their 20s, ends up with a terrific job title, often vacated by a baby boomer, and ends up renting a really fancy apartment. An apartment in their respective downtowns, Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, Miami, where it happens to be, and often they end up paying more in monthly rent than they would for a monthly mortgage. Their monthly mortgage payment would be less than their monthly rent. They're paying more to rent. And part of that is lifestyle. They want to be with other young professionals. Part of that is because they don't want to be tied to any region. So today it's Washington, tomorrow it's Nashville, then it's Austin, then Boston, back to Washington. And I also understand there's some skepticism regarding economic forecasters. I understand that. So when we economists say something is about to happen, the tendency is to say, well, that's clearly not what's going to happen. It doesn't stop me from forecasting, but I understand the skepticism. And this is my first forecast in the morning. You watch. In 10 years, these 27-year-olds living in these fancy downtown apartments, you watch in 10 years, they will be 37. And a lot happens, well, watch. You don't have to believe me now. But a lot happens in those 10 magical years. People have children, they get married, often in that order. And all of a sudden, renting is not their best option. And I don't have to speculate on this, you can see in the data. What's coming back? It's home-owning households. What's flattening out? Renter households. You look at U.S. home ownership, it's coming off its bottom, generally speaking. We had some setbacks earlier in the year in terms of home ownership because the mortgage rates had risen late last year, but that's been undone recently. And despite the fact that everyone knows these demographics are going to play out, that the 27-year-olds become 32-year-olds and then 37-year-olds, we've built very few new homes in this country. The capital has gone toward building apartments, of course, not single-family homes. Part of this is because it takes really skilled workers to build a new home. And because there aren't that many skilled construction workers left to hire, the median price of a new American home is $316,000. That's actually quite high. It may not seem high by Charles County or Washington Metropolitan Area standards. Nationally, that's a huge number. So what that does is, there's demand out there for homes. There's not a lot being built. It pushes down the inventory of homes available for sale. The existing inventory becomes truncated. So you see the orange-colored bar here? That's September 2008 housing inventory, months of supply available at the current sales pace. The blue-colored bar is September 2019, and you can see the inventory fell massively in Charles County in just 1 year. But it fell massively everywhere. So that drives up home values, of course. That's one thing, but tells you there's an opportunity to build more homes here. And with the millennials coming, and here comes the other issue. Housing affordability. Everyone talks about housing affordability, but the real question should be, housing affordability for whom? Who are we talking about here? If we're talking about people living in poverty, okay, that's one thing. It's a public policy issue, that's for sure. If we're talking about young professionals, people who have young families, that's another issue. If we're talking about occupation categories that cause us to remote, police officers, firefighters, nurses, teachers, that's another issue. But that's the question that's got to be answered from a public policy perspective, and with the idea we've got to be fiscally sustainable as well. And that certain property types generate more fiscal surplus than others. That's important. But this is something that Charles County is going to face, and you have a group of leaders now who I think are up to facing this kind of challenge and grabbing this kind of opportunity. This is Charles County housing unit sales. That black line is a trend line. But what I'm just trying to say here is that home sales on a year-over-year basis in September were up 17.2%. So the demand is already here, but there's going to be more to come. That's my point. Enormous opportunity for Charles County. Previous speakers said what? Tourism is important. No question, but it happened to be toward the end of the presentation too. But it is important. You know why? Because often the things that cause tourists to come to a community also increase quality of life for those who live in the community on a full-time basis. Whether it's planned open space or whatever it happens to be, main streets with great restaurants, whatever it happens to be. It's appealing to human beings, whether they're tourists or full-time residents. Often, places that are great tourist destinations are also great places to live. Asheville, North Carolina is a very pleasant place to live in. Also very expensive. Okay, enough of that. A few minutes left, let me talk about the forecast. This forecast is now coming from an economist. Who is an economist? An economist is an expert who will know tomorrow why things he predicted yesterday didn't happen today, close quote. So if there's a time to shut down during this presentation, that time has come. Doesn't stop me from forecasting. And one of the things that we economists can do is look at leading economic indicators. Here's 10 of them. This is the Conference Board's index of leading economic indicators. So it's 10 leading indicators in their own right, bundled into one composite statistic, the leading index. And these vertical bars represent the percentage change in the value of that leading index from month to month to month. If you look carefully enough, you'll see that in 2017 and 2018, the composite index was going up in value, month by month by month, telling us what? 2018 was going to be a strong year for the economy, and we're going to start 2019 off strong too, and that's exactly what happened. But look at the last few readings here. They've been wobbly. Telling us what? This economy is set to soften. It's already slowed meaningfully. It's going to slow some more. I'll talk about why I believe that as I go through this section of the presentation. But if you get more granular with the leading indicators, say, look at the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Survey, consumer sentiment or confidence is no longer rising. Do you know one group where confidence has really fallen recently? Small business. The National Federation of Independent Business conducts a survey each and every month of small businesses across this country. And based on that survey, they craft a small business optimism index. Here I'm graphing through a subcomponent of that index question, Small Business America, is it a good time to expand your business? You can see in 2018, absolutely, great. 2019, not so much. We can't find workers, the workers we find are either not reliable or just too expensive for us. And there's a vulnerability here. What is that vulnerability? Well, there's many of them, of course, but the principal one, in my view, indebtedness. If you're faced with low interest, it's like a child who's looking at cookies all day long. What's going to happen? They're going to eat a bunch of cookies, especially if they're Oreos, because those are delicious. But if you keep low interest rates in front of people all day long or for many years, what are they going to do? They're going to borrow, to spend, borrow to invest. Here are three forms of household indebtedness in America. Auto mortgage, credit card. These are not dollar values. What I've done is I've indexed each of these disparate data series to 100 back to 1990 and then grown out the respective data series. There was a period of household deleveraging after the economic downturn. But that ended many years ago. I left student debt off this chart on purpose. Because student debt in this country is growing so rapidly that if I put it on this chart, all these other lines just flatten out because the y-axis explodes. And it goes to 400. The entire world, by the way, is very indebted. Global debt is approaching $250 trillion, equivalent to about 320% of annual global output. We've never seen numbers like this. The national debt just rose about $23 trillion. You may or may not be aware that corporate debt has never been so high in America. You say, Anirban, how could that be? I heard that corporate America generated profit growth hand over fist for years. You're right, they have been. So why are they not paying down their debt? Well, this is what happens when we buy back our shares every year. You issue debt to buy back the shares, debt goes up, equity goes down. My younger daughter just turned 13 years old, Basu. And because she's 13, her favorite store at the mall, Claire's, Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Kelleher's, but they sell some pretty impressive merchandise, what the kids call merch. Earrings, hair clips, glitter, My Little Pony, cell phone cases. I shop there. And if you've ever been to Kelleher's, they're always, as long as the mall's open, it's busy. Successful enterprise. And yet they don't have much free cash flow anymore. Why? Because several years ago, private equity firm leveraged up the balance sheet with the board's approval, tried to maximize return on equity. They don't have much free, in fact, they went bankrupt last year. Toys R Us. People ask me, Toys R Us, what happened there? Was that Walmart, Target, Amazon? Yeah, all the above. But actually, even before the Great Recession began, so now this is many years ago, a consortium of private equity firms came together to leverage up Toys R Us' balance sheet, again with the board's approval, to maximize return on equity. So when the Amazon effect became apparent, they did not have enough free cash flow which to fight back. You buy a child a toy on Amazon, when will they get that toy? Maybe tomorrow? When do they want that toy? Precisely. They've been crying for 5 hours. Many of us have driven Toys R Us or driven an ambulance. And in the world of the impatient consumer, there's a place at the table for Toys R Us. Toys are us. That's all we are. We're toys, and they are us. But you haven't gotten Toys R Us recently, either exposition or otherwise, neither have I. Because they just go bankrupt, they were liquidated. And what I'm suggesting to you is that it would not take much further economic deterioration and much further loss of confidence, such as companies that are heretofore been expanding rapidly, including their staffing models and including by taking on more debt, begin to retrench. So when you heard General Motors announce 14,000 layoffs late last year, pre-strike, and Ford announced another 7,000 layoffs, and Lowe's announced several thousand layoffs, and Dress Barn closed all 650 of its stores in one fell swoop, and Forever 21 go bankrupt, and not just us, by the way, Thomas Cook, if you've heard of this company, 178-year-old tour operator, England, just went bankrupt. Why, Anirban? They had $2 billion in debt. Why would a tour operator have $2 billion in debt? I have no earthly idea. It's how we do, and it's a vulnerability. So final slide. Look, when I come to Charles County, in fact, when I go to any county, but especially Charles County, because I have a relationship with you, multi-year relationship. I know Marcia and many others here, and I adore them, and they do great work. This has been one of the most vibrant counties in Maryland for decades. So when I provide an audience like this a forecast, I don't just wing it. We have a model back at home that spits out forecasts of GDP and job growth and wage growth and inflation. In fact, economists do it with models. And I think you'd agree that's impressive. Now, I mean statistical models, obviously. And look, this presentation, and this is from my vantage point. Your vantage point is likely to be very different from mine. But from my vantage point, this presentation started out great. I was talking about job growth, lengthiest expansion in American history, low unemployment. And then it sort of got a little disturbing, very negative, very pessimistic. I started talking about debts and vulnerability. And I'm not alone. You may have seen that recently a majority of economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal predict a recession to begin within the next 2 years. But it should be pointed out that much of that negativity reflected in forecasts and in financial market volatility relates to things people believe will happen, could happen, worst case scenarios. But if you ask any of us who have been predicting recession, what will be the triggering events? What will cause this economy to go from growth to lack thereof? You will hear crickets. In fact, important parts of the U.S. economy continue to perform well, the most important of which, of course, is the consumer, 70% of the economy. And why shouldn't they be spending? Interest rates are low, they got jobs, wages are rising. Amazon, by the way, is not a 501c3. It's not. It's not. It's for profit. It is for profit. So when they raise their minimum wage to $50 an hour, it's not for charitable purposes. Why would they do that? Raise their own minimum wage to $50 an hour? No one told them to do that. They did it themselves. The board and the CEO said, I want to do that. We want to do that. Why? Because they know absent such bold action, they will lose their best workers to the fulfillment centers. And they cannot afford that to happen when they're trying to go to same-day delivery. Bank of America goes to $20 an hour minimum wage, not for charitable purposes. Just tells you how strong this labor market is, but of course that continues to support the consumer sector as well. Corporate earnings have held up pretty well. Stock markets at record levels today. Construction, major industry. What's more than significant upside risk? Imagine the following were to happen. We got to trade with China. Did anyone think these negotiations were going to be easy, simple, predictable? Two most powerful sides on the planet, two very different forms of government, two largest economies in the world, so many personalities involved in just a single person. We knew that these negotiations were going to be difficult, and they have been, but it's an upside risk. What if we get an infrastructure spending plan with revenue source identified? I don't expect that to come out of the federal government anytime soon. They can barely keep the government open. But there's two things about which Republicans and Democrats agree in this country. Number one, the other side is un-American. And number two, we don't spend enough in this country on infrastructure. And by the way, they have to do something because the Highway Trust Fund goes insolvent in 2021. It's an opening. Number 3, eliminate extra tariffs on steel, aluminum, etc. I'm an economist. I tend to like free and fair trade. So I use this as a placeholder for the broader trade wars, not just between the Americans and the Chinese, but the Americans and the Indians, the Americans and the European Union, so on and so forth. From an economist's perspective, at least this economist's perspective, we already see some progress along this dimension. Recently, tariffs on steel and aluminum coming from Canada and Mexico were repealed. And then finally, the Federal Reserve keeps accommodating, keeps adding to liquidity, keeps interest rates low. It's happening. So hypothesis 2019 will be remembered as a quite decent year for the US economy. Expect the year to end up with around 2.2% GDP growth. Not fabulous, basically back to pre-tax cut rates of growth. But if we don't get some of these boxes checked here, watch out for 2020. And here's my number one reason to be concerned. Yes, I get it, your boards are crickets, I get it. But I'm an economist, that doesn't surprise me. My goodness, I've been speaking for almost an hour. But here's the number one factor to be concerned about 2020's economy, even though we have plentiful momentum in the economy going into 2020, next year's election. Because there's already a lot of uncertainty facing business people and other economic actors. And you say, well, this happens every 4 years on the presidential election. So it's not a big deal, it's a very big deal. Why? Because I don't remember any time or any period, during my lifetime at least, during which the differences in terms of policymaking between the potential presidents is so massive. All I'm trying to say is, there's a big difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. There's a big difference between Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump. There's a big difference between any conceivable human being and Donald Trump. I do not say that in pejorative, not at all. Because some people love, some people don't love. I get that. All I'm saying is if you're running an energy supply company, are you going to make a major investment in natural gas or coal or anything now, not knowing who the next president's going to be? I wouldn't. Bernie Sanders just called, heads of energy firms criminals. That's a big difference from the current administration. Do I put my next factory in China, Mexico? Do I have to put it in America? Do I buy an electric vehicle now? What's going to happen to my state and local tax deductions as a Marylander? Are they going to come back? Does the alternative minimum tax come back to bite me the way it once did as a business operator? Are my marginal tax rates going to go up? I'm not doing anything major until I get answers to those questions. And I'm not going to know until at least November. I'm waiting. And I believe the suppression of transactional activity in the second and third quarters of next year could by the third quarter of next year, drive this economy into negative growth territory. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm an economist. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today in Charles County. It has been a privilege. Thank you. Do we have any time for Q&A?
We have time for just 1 or 2 questions.
1 or 2 questions, okay. So maybe 1 or 2 questions more than I hoped to answer. So are there any questions here? That's a joke. Any questions here? Please, feel free. Talk about anything you want to talk about. Yes, there's a hand in the back. As far away from you as conceivable.
Hello, my name is Santosh Takar, and I have a question for you. You predicted the best thing that can happen in Charles County is growth in housing sector, where 27 to 37 years will come and probably reside. But my question to you is, what will fuel those people to come here? What does Charles County has to do to attract them to reside in this county?
Great question. Why would the young knowledge worker come here to Charles County? And my view is this, and it might sound very limited. Charles County is not competing with the rest of the world for these professions. It's not. If you're thinking about living in Charles County, my guess is you've already decided you want to be part of the Washington metropolitan area or the Washington-Baltimore metroplex. But you want to be in this region. against whom is the competition then for the young knowledge worker to live here, to be a resident, to pay income tax and property tax? Prince George's County, Calvert County, Anne Arundel County, the District of Columbia itself, and maybe even, if you stretch, some of the Northern Virginia communities. Maybe. But you have to ask yourself a question, why would they want to come to Charles County? Why would they want to raise a family in Charles County? And it's because there's beauty and they're inspired by that. That means beautiful main streets. I'm not saying that that's a Charles County forte, I'm just saying that that's advantageous, if that exists. There has to be reasonably diverse housing stock, some of it new, involving the latest technologies. Have to be, of course, good schools. Let me not forget that. Has to be something to do in the evenings, good restaurants, so on and so forth, so that's business attraction, but a certain type of business. maybe a business that appeals to the finer things in life, that kind of taste. So that's what it's going to take. But again, Charles County is part of the 4th largest job market in America, America's largest economy in the world. That's a pretty good place to be. So there's Charles County. But then, as is often the case in this connected world, the last mile is often the most difficult to deal with. That's the same thing in Charles County. So it's got to look at Calvert County and Prince George's County and the District of Columbia and say, what can we offer? What's our niche? Can we make the waterfront more accessible to folks? Can we develop more planned open space? Can we have more coherent architecture along Main Street, so on and so forth? I think that's the answer. It's quality of life. And one can never neglect the schools. And I have to point out something to you. Our schools in Maryland are not doing well. I don't know if you looked at the public school performance. The NAEP test just came out. Maryland is falling behind. We should be one of the best performing states in the country based on how wealthy we are and how educated adults are in this state. We are not. We are right at the national average in many measures. We are doing less with more. So there are all kinds of issues out there, but quality of housing stock is one of the big things. And again, the question is affordable for whom? What's the goal here? Who are you trying to house? And what does that mean for our fiscal sustainability? And thank you for your question. Any other questions here?
I think that we are out of time.
So no more questions.
So sorry about that. But there are cookies in the back. If Anirban's reference to cookies have you drooling, and we'll take a 5-minute break so that you can help yourself to some more coffee and cookies.
Okay. Good morning again, everybody. My name is Taylor Ewell. I'm the redevelopment manager for the Economic Development Department. Previously, Jay Garner talked about building the workforce of the future and identified jobs of the future. That's a great segue into this next segment. But before I introduce you to our panel for the discussion on the future of work, please direct your attention to the screen for one more of our marketing videos.
My brother's the ultimate jerk. Our mother was born in Cuba, and our father was born in Jamaica.
Mr. Frey decided he wanted to be that jerk, to be different than any other Caribbean restaurant that he has experienced as he grew up.
Everything that we make here is made in-house. It is made with no MSG. Some of our food is vegan, some of our food is vegetarian. So we do offer a multitude of opportunities for every type of customer.
We're the only fast casual Caribbean restaurant in Charles County.
Anybody that's looking to open up a business in Charles County, they have a tremendous amount of resources. The Economic Development Department here in Charles County is fantastic. That's what I loved about working with them, and it really made the process so much better. The permit process, understanding the rules and the regulations that are here in Charles County. So I would recommend call them, set up some time, get an understanding of where you are, and then it will make your process so much easier.
We decided to locate our headquarters in Charles County because of the multitude of diversity.
The community has been very welcoming to us.
We cook our food in small batches. That maintains the freshness of the quality of the food.
Our customers can go to any location and feel that they're having the same experience.
The reception from Charles County as a community has been fantastic. There's so many diverse people that are in this area. We're a Caribbean restaurant, but our food is not just for folks who are from the Caribbean. When they come in, we want them to think that they're coming in and having dinner in their dining room with their family, and we're proud of that.
Okay. For today's discussion on the future of work, we have a diverse group of industry experts. This important conversation will be led by Ann Balduzzi, Director of Advisory Services at TEDCO. She is joined by Ellen Flowers Fields, Interim Vice President for Continuing Education and Workforce Development at the College of Southern Maryland. Mike Kelleher, Executive Director of the Maryland Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and Bob Kavetsky, CEO and President of the Energetics Technology Center in Charles County. Complete biographies for all are on our website, meetcharlescounty.com. Thank you all for being here today, and take it away.
Great, thanks for having us. And we also want to just point out that we think this is really amazing foresight on Charles County's part to put together this type of event, because there's a lot of change coming up. We're going to talk about some of that change today. But before we get started, I'm going to let you hear a little bit of background information on each of our panelists.
Great. Thanks, Ann, and thank you, everybody, for having me here today. What an exciting program and agenda. It's tough to follow Anirban. So again, my name is Mike Kelleher. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland MEP, which is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership here in the state of Maryland. We're a statewide organization. We're a nonprofit focused on growing the manufacturing sector in Maryland. So we work with manufacturers of all industries, all sizes, and the idea is that we want to grow the businesses that are here. We think manufacturing is a key component of economic growth, a key component of job creation and job retention. And so our organization is put in place and funded in partnership through the federal government, the state government, as well as industry, to really work on all areas of the business and hopefully spark that economic growth.
Great.
Yeah, Bob Kavetsky, CEO of the Energetics Technology Center. I've actually been doing business here in Charles County for about 25 years now, 12 years as a Fed at Naval Surface Warfare Center, Indian Head, and then another 12 years running the Energetics Technology Center. At ETC, we do a couple things. We do research and development work in energetics, robotics, what I like to call pointy head type work. We've run an incubator actually for Charles County called TechFire for about 5 years. So we've gotten into small business startup work. We do policy work for the Department of Navy and Department of Defense. Currently, we're very involved in a project that the Navy has, really fascinating. They call it Naval X, where we're actually helping the Navy figure out how they can innovate faster, bring products to the warfighter in a more efficient and effective fashion. And it's great to be here.
Yes, good morning. Ellen Flowers Fields. I'm a representative of your community college, the College of Southern Maryland. I'm currently serving as Interim Vice President of Continuing Education and Workforce Development. I've lived in the Southern Maryland community for 20 years, and during that time have had close working relationships with economic development and workforce development in the community, and realize how important this conversation is to the business owners in the audience, understanding the future of work, the workplace, and the workforce, and I'm very excited to be a part of this panel.
Great, thank you. And just to give you a little bit of a snapshot on my background, I have basically been on the leading and bleeding edge of the workforce community since I got out of college, where we were pioneering the internet in the early days, and then eventually found my way out to Apple in Silicon Valley, where I got to work with some really cutting-edge technologies. And those are the technologies, and some of these even technologies that are coming out today, that are really impacting the workforce. I, in fact, have a patent in data match analysis, which is one of those early AI patents that were referenced earlier. So given all of this change and the rise of automation, robots, machine learning, AI, all of these things that we're talking about, how do you expect this speed of change to really impact with the, kind of, a lot of people are saying it's going to be like the Industrial Revolution. I personally think it's going to be like the invention of electricity, the introduction of the internet, and the Industrial Revolution all combined, and it's that amount of disruption is going to be happening to all of us over just the next few years and decades. So with that in mind, let me start off here with Mike. What kind of trends are we thinking about that are going to be transforming the workforce? For example, the Oxford Economics Report predicts 20 million manufacturing jobs worldwide will be lost to robots by 2030.
So I think the manufacturing sector is a great microcosm of that speed of technology change and technology adoption. And if you look at manufacturing around Maryland and around the country, it's an industry that has continually changed and evolved. But if you look at where it's gone in the last 3 to 5 years, even shorter than that, the new technologies that are coming in and the new technologies that manufacturers are looking at to help improve their processes, help improve their productivity, is really just accelerated and taken off. In the manufacturing world, you hear the term Industry 4.0, which is a collection of AI and AR and VR and robotics and automation. And while that in and of itself can be scary and daunting for the manufacturing community, what we are seeing is that manufacturers around the state and here in Charles County are looking at those technologies and how they can introduce them into their operations and do it in a manner that's not going to disrupt things. So we're seeing more and more companies look at robotics, and as robotics become more affordable and they become more scalable, you're seeing more collaborative robotics. So the investment is not 6 and 7 figures, it's 5 and 6 figures. They're able to get a quicker return on that investment. Companies looking at including data and sensor technologies into their lines so that they can start to do things like predictive maintenance and autonomous maintenance. So we're seeing that every day in the manufacturing world. And although we might see some short-term job loss due to robotics and AI, I think the long-term growth is going to be there as these companies are able to use that technology to get a competitive advantage and put themselves ahead.
Great. Bob, what are you seeing out there?
Well, I think maybe a couple of anecdotes in terms of hiring people. I want to be a little careful because I have some of my folks here today, so I have to speak to them in a somewhat anonymous fashion. But we're actually doing, we've been working with the University of Maryland for about 4 years now on a project where we're actually looking at how you can bring artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques that the drug companies are using to development of new energetic materials. And we actually had a postdoc working on that program that I was really excited about hiring until he came to me and he told me he had a job offer from Facebook for $275,000 a year. And that's more than the top 2 highest paid guys I have in my company. And so I rapidly fell out of the bidding war for that talent. What I have seen though is what I think we're a little more focused on is what I call almost hiring the good athlete now, not just the technical specialist, because most of the people coming out of school are pretty well versed in the technology, but what we really need are people who can adapt rapidly to embracing new things that are coming into the marketplace in terms of analytic tools, in terms of experimentation type work. And so I think our most recent hires, some of our technical folks, have really been what I call the good athlete type approach. And actually, fortunately, one of them was a young lady from La Plata that came to us to an internship. She was a Catholic U grad and came to us, and she did a great job as an intern, and we brought her on board as full-time engineer. And by the way, she's a biomedical engineer. We do no biomedical engineering at ETC, but this is a classic case of hiring the good athlete, if you will.
Great. Now, the other trend that we're seeing out there is what people call the gig economy. And I recently read that 1 out of 5 freelancers, actually only 1 out of 5 want to work full-time. The rest enjoy that kind of gig type of work. So Ellen, what's your experience when it comes to seeing this pattern of people getting into this gig kind of economy of work or this changing style of workforce?
I think our previous speakers, both of them, both Jay and Anirban, touched upon this when you talk about entrepreneurship and the low unemployment rate. Individuals are looking for sustainable work, and they're finding it by doing things like Uber and Lyft. Those are very simple areas that everyone can relate to. But increasingly in the United States, we're seeing an uptick in individuals and solo entrepreneurs that are engaging in business starts, while some of them while still working full-time jobs, others it becomes their job in order to maintain their household income. I think the challenges that we face in economic development and workforce development is connecting to those individuals. Unlike most businesses where you're reporting business taxes and it's very easy to reach them, they're registering in your counties or in your state, these individuals are reporting their business income to the IRS. And the IRS is the golden gate that we cannot get behind as government in the community, and we shouldn't. So connecting with those individuals and helping them to grow, finding out what they need to scale up and grow is tremendous. I'll just share a few statistics with you. It's shared that 94% of the U.S. net employment growth in the last decade is based upon this gig economy that continues to grow. And the future of work is becoming more diverse as people, immigrants from other countries and individuals, young people in this country decide that they don't want to go to work for corporate America, but they want to launch out and start on their own.
Right. Yeah, diversity, by the way, is key when it comes to artificial intelligence. We wanted to represent all of us. So change is really hard. You know, it's really hard to sort of adjust to this growth and all of the change that's impacting our businesses. There's certainly a lot of opportunity to be maybe perhaps more competitive with some of these changes. But there's also, you know, I think people are scared by it to some extent. So what are the ways that businesses are resisting change right now, or maybe it's subconscious, but how can they maybe better adapt to this kind of change or embrace it?
Go ahead.
So I'll jump in first. In the manufacturing space, manufacturing guys and girls they're traditionalists, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And so there's that culture of a little bit of resistance to disrupt the process. At the same time, looking at incorporating technologies and changing how they recruit and train their workers can often be seen as something that's costly. It's going to require investment. So there's a little bit of a push and a little bit of a resistance to that. But when you balance that out, right, they are innovators and they are problem solvers. So you're seeing, you know, the flow of manufacturing is changing and the technology is changing. So we're starting to see them look now to say how I recruit and train my people needs to change as well. I can't find individuals who have gone through the same process that my machinist or my welder did 30, 40 years ago. I have to change the way I think about onboarding and bringing these folks in the pool of talent, looking at that good athlete as a potential candidate for that environment. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to change how they recruit and they train their people to better reflect what's going on in the environment itself.
Yeah, a couple comments. One is, I think, at least for me, I grew up in sort of the classic go to work for 30 years for a given organization, and now I'm happy, semi-facetiously, if somebody works for me for 30 minutes versus 30 years. Matter of fact, the newest gentleman I hired is here today, and I do this with all of the new folks. After their first week on the job, I ask them, are they coming back on Monday? Because I hope we've piqued their curiosity enough that we've enticed them to come back. So I think that's a real big cultural shift for many people that are running companies. I think you have to constantly be making the job engaging and meaningful. I think that's a big part of what we have to do, is to make sure that people see that they're, at least in our world, that they're doing really meaningful, impactful things, and in terms of keeping them. I think also as Mike mentioned, the constant learning. I mean, people just need to be off being trained or educated or, you know, self-taught. There's a lot of great resources out there nowadays. A lot of these massively online courses that you can take for free. For instance, College of Southern Maryland offers huge, you know, array of courses that people can take. We're just constantly in training mode, and I think that's, at least in our kind of work, you just have to have that mindset that people are going to be often being trained on just a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you all are lucky to have College of Southern Maryland and Ellen here to expand on that.
Yes, well, I echo the comments already been made. Many business owners, the culture of change is not one that's easily embraced. Mm-hmm. Technology can be very scary. We often hear that technology will and does replace human beings. Very often technology can create efficiencies if we use them in an augmented way, so that we can use our human capital in a more maximized way and use technology to do those more routine and redundant things. I think very often businesses, as Bob just mentioned, don't do enough reskilling and retooling of their existing labor force to help them remain competitive. I think in America we have a long way to go to examine how we hire and recruit individuals. Currently, and very traditionally, we have a job spec. We hire someone to fill a specific seat in a specific role within our organization. Because technology is changing and because the economy is so fluid, We may hire someone to do A today, but in a year, we really need someone to do C. And if we're not preparing that person that's there currently doing A for the future job, then very often that person may become obsolete or laid off, and we have to hire again, and there we go with our skill shortage. So the constant evolution of reskilling and moving people about your organization and training them in different roles within the organization can become not only a powerful retention tool for businesses, but a powerful way to keep your businesses in a competitive posture in the future.
Good points, excellent points. Can you share any sort of success stories of companies that you've met with or interacted with, recently that are actually adapting some of these principles and are utilizing them to make their businesses more competitive?
Well, I'll highlight, maybe this is an internal success story, but if I can crow a little bit. And of course, there's always a danger when you highlight one individual that you're going to make everybody else mad. But actually, one of my longest tenure guys is Shane Gargano, and he's actually a CSM product. And he came to us on an internship about 9 years ago. He has an IT background. But Shane has become our facility security officer. He does a lot of our HR work. And he's now a project manager for a program we're running for the Army called X-Tech Search, which is one of these prize competitions, tech prize competitions, and he's the PM for that. So I pay a lot of it. That's, I think, an example of having somebody grow into a job due to their natural aptitude and curiosity. And I think curiosity is one of the things I wanted to mention. I think is very important, at least for me and the people we hire, that they just have that natural curiosity about solving problems, if you will. And so that doesn't mean everybody else at ETC, you're not doing a great job. You are, but Shane's been with me the longest, and just an example of somebody that has just become invaluable to the organization. And he's a local product too, so that's why I'm kind of touting him here. He's a Charles County born and raised.
So we've got a company that we work with. And the owner, he calls them the whiz kids, right? And it's the same thing. It's that young individual who has grown into the job or the position. It's really an add to what they were hired for. And that individual is the one who's chartered with playing with the technologies, right? So he's playing with 3D printing in the production environment, and they're using that to create some tooling for their machines. He's playing with the data collection that they're getting from these machines. And it's really a skill set that nobody in the organization had prior to that. It was piecemeal around there. But the company and the owner has enabled this individual, and now it's a group of individuals, to go out and create projects for themselves that are gonna change how they do that business. So they've put structure around that idea of creating a culture of innovation. And it's exciting those young professionals, those young engineers, those young business-minded professionals to really feel like they can have an ownership in something that's going on in the process. And that's been very effective for the organization.
Good. So we talked about training. Anything else that you can think of that really businesses need to be doing now to prepare themselves?
On-the-job training and developing within their organizations career ladders and career opportunities. Cross-skilling your workforce becomes very, very important. And that's more than just job shadowing. It's actually giving your internal employees an opportunity to sit in the day in the life and the actual experiences of various jobs around them. You create redundancy. It certainly helps with retention. And it helps with the ability of your business to respond to the ever-changing needs in the environment. It sounds very simple, but it's not the traditional model that most businesses work in. It's a very disruptive model where it challenges you to think about your processes a little bit differently, to think about everyone in your organization as a leader, and to provide those opportunities within your organization. So the companies that are doing it well allows their employees to wear different hats at different times. And of course you maximize the skill sets that person has, but then they also share their skill sets with others within the organization. So that model is one that really needs to be developed in small business and in large-scale businesses in order to be competitive.
Good. And what types of trends are you all watching right now to sort of predict the types of skills that might be needed in the future? Is there anything that's giving you sort of a heads up?
I'd say one of the things we're really seeing is a really increased importance on the soft skills. And boy, if people can't work in a team, they're of no use to us, period. I mean, the day of a brilliant scientist working over in their corner, maybe that still exists somewhere, but I know in my world it doesn't exist anymore. And so the people really have to be able to work very effectively in teams. And so when I don't even use the term interviewing anymore, because I think in many cases we're selling people on coming to work for us. I mean, most people nowadays, you have to talk to them 4 or 5 times before they accept the position. I think they're interviewing us rather than interviewing them. But I think that those soft skills and really looking for markers of were they successful either in a previous job or in their academic world, where they were doing things outside their own field and they're working maybe in teams and doing that successfully. It sounds kind of cliche to say that, but we've really seen if people can't work in a team environment, it really makes it hard to utilize them, especially in a small organization like ours.
I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read what I wrote. Because there are many, many studies out there, available studies on the future of work and jobs in the workplace, not only in America but abroad. But this is the reskilling imperative that I've summarized from several of those reports. It says the true proficiency of the future is in human skills, such as creativity, initiative, critical thinking, persuasion and negotiation skills, attention to detail, flexibility, and complex problem solving, emotional intelligence, leadership, a service orientation, and a mindset of agile learning. We're very used to and very comfortable teaching technical skills in America. How do you teach all of that I just talked about? The good news is, for several decades, there have been a number of thought leaders and organizations that have been focused on measuring what we sometimes call soft skills, which are now more so being called essential skills, and what they've called human skills that are imperative. And that focus is on creating communities that are work ready, providing the technical skills that people need, but also having an assessment of these human skills and a person's ability to have demonstrated that they have these skills. ACT, the national testing agency that most of us are familiar with because we took an SAT at some time or another, has a national skill work readiness-based testing called Work Keys. And at the College of Southern Maryland, we're looking at Work Keys and the deliverables that it has in its work-ready components. And basically what it's measuring is the competencies of individuals and their demonstrated competencies in the areas that I just shared with you. How powerful would that be if someone walked into your door with a resume that said, here's my work history and my technical skills, but here's my work-ready competency that shows you that I've demonstrated critical thinking, that I've demonstrated that I am customer service oriented, that I have demonstrated these essential human skills that you're going to need in my workplace. We have work to do in working with our business community and our economic development community to determine opportunities for developing a work-ready community here in Charles County and in Southern Maryland. But I really think that that initiative will be at the forefront of what we'll do in workforce preparedness for the future, and also for helping employers with their current workforce and helping them demonstrate the skills that are needed to really be competitive in the future.
Great. And just in case if anybody had questions about that, Amazon has announced that it's going to be spending roughly $700 million to retrain 100,000 workers by 2025 to get them into more highly skilled jobs. So these big companies are investing in their workers, which is nice to hear. But I think we all, at all levels, need to be investing in our workers to a certain degree. So just to kind of bring it a little bit closer to the DC and Charles County space, how do you see work shifting and changing just in this region? Do you see anything, Mike?
I think what we're seeing, and Anirban put up the job numbers, right? Manufacturing was one of the sectors that actually had a net job loss, which is unfortunate. We obviously need to change that. But what we're seeing in the manufacturing sector is the types of jobs. The low-skilled, unskilled work is somewhat going away from Maryland. But the manufacturers that are here are ones that have a niche and they serve an industry, or it's the ones that are problem solvers. They're able to respond quickly and adapt and innovate their products and their solutions to meet that need. So the skill set required for that is a higher level skill set. It's a more technical skill set. It's all of those skills that Ellen and Bob just talked about. Can we bring that together? So the companies that we're seeing, they're growing, right? The manufacturers we're touching and we're engaging with, they're growing, but it's by the dozens of jobs or the fives and tens. It's not hundreds of jobs. And I think that's really what manufacturing of the future in Maryland's going to look like, as we have companies bring in more technology and they're growing organically. It's not going to be that white elephant that employs 2,000-3,000 individuals doing low-skilled, repetitive work.
Well, there's a specific thing I actually want to talk about, and it has to do with something actually happening over on the western side of the county. And actually, I'm going to make sure I don't steal the thunder of the Economic Development Organization, because we're actually getting ready to brief the commissioners in a couple weeks on a plan that Economic Development asked us to do. And the analysis they asked us to do was how could the county perhaps better leverage NSWC Indian Head from an economic development standpoint, and also help them with their core mission. I think most of us know we have a wonderful group of rocket scientists right in our own backyard. And so we just completed that work and reported it to Economic Development. But a couple of the exciting things about that in my mind are the NSWC Indian Head actually in their strategic plan, which is publicly available. I'm probably one of the 5 people outside of the base that actually read the strategic plan. But it says that they're going to actually grow their in-house workforce by 400 in the coming years. And I think we in the county really need to look at that as a golden opportunity. I wouldn't call it once in a lifetime, but certainly in the 25 years I've been here, that's probably one of the biggest surges of employment that's going to be in the area. And I think one of the earlier speakers talked about placemaking, and I think we need to think about how do we make a place here that we're going to bring these people and attract them to actually not only work here, but live here. And so I think there's some things we're going to recommend to the commissioners with Economic Development's concurrence to help shape that environment. But I think that's a pretty exciting opportunity. And if somebody said that, hey, you have a company that you're recruiting that's going to bring 400 workers, and these are high-skilled workers. So when you look at the economic impact numbers of the base, the average salary, weekly salary of the people, the federal workers in Charles County is almost $2,000 a week versus about $900 a week for all the other employment categories. So these are really good jobs and will help drive a big economic development opportunity. I think most of the folks in the room know that the base is one of the biggest economic engines in the county, beyond like the school system and government. So I think we need to rally around and with the base and figure out how we can help make that as big an impact for both the national security part of the mission as well as the economic development aspects of that for the county. One specific thing is I think we ought to have some kind of day where it's, Love a Rocket Scientist Day in Charles County or something like that. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Love a Rocket Scientist is the wrong thing nowadays.
Love
appreciate.
Is good.
Love is okay?
Yes,
Love's
love is
okay.
good.
All right. So I'm going to make that specific recommendation to the commissioners that we have a Hug a Rocket Scientist at some point in time.
Ellen, are you seeing any trends in what you're working with? The types of students that are coming in, or people wanting to get reskilled and wanting to learn more?
Certainly, I think in line with what's already been said, much of the industry that's predicted to grow along the region are those that are heavily technology focused, augmented reality. Privacy management is becoming a very, very big issue. So people who are skilled in that area, nanotech, of course, robotics, energy storage, because we certainly have to continue to preserve energy, and then self-driving and operating technology. So we're going to continue to see a need for a very highly technically savvy labor force. So it does give me some hope that our digital native children that we admonish because they always have their hands on technology will possibly be the most savvy workers in this environment for the jobs that don't currently exist. We don't even know what skills they're going to require. It's very intuitive for them to operate in this augmented virtual reality environment because, as we heard earlier, the young men are doing it all day long. So they're going to be very, very prepared for these jobs of the future. I think that, as well as another data point that the U.S. Census report is that 3/4 of the nation's businesses don't have paid employees. So these businesses are operating, they may have partners or 1099 contractors, but they don't have paid employees. So going back to the gig economy again, we're going to see continued growth in that area. And then Charles County, specifically in 2016, U.S. Census reports that there were just over 11,000 businesses in this county with no paid employees. Regionally, almost 25,000 of them exist between Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert counties. And so understanding what those business establishers are doing and what their needs are going to be critical to not only employment opportunities, but industry growth in the future as we move forward. And I think one last point I want to make to that is that when we talked earlier about the unemployment rate, I think it hides something that's very important that we should not lose sight of, and that's underemployment. Many people are holding 2 or more part-time jobs or a job where they're making under $20 an hour, which in our region is not a livable wage. So we really have to look at the fact that there are many people that are income constrained and asset limited. Some of you in the audience may be familiar with the United Way's ALICE report. It's asset limited, income constrained, employed. That's the working poor that we're always talking about. They continue to live in our community and providing opportunities through reskilling and education and training to further engage those individuals in the labor force for economic growth will become critical.
Yeah, great points. And if you really kind of dial this down, we're talking, I think, at the root of a lot of this is education. Really, we have to be flexible. We have to be willing to embrace the change that's going to be coming down the road. And change that's happening actually right now. There's some really disruptive things that we're seeing out, at least within companies. And I liken it to those, early days of the internet, where companies said, no, I don't need a website. I don't need a website. Well, pretty much every company now has one. So you can't keep denying the change that's going to be happening. When it comes to artificial intelligence, some of the few jobs that are going to be safe are neonatal nurses and kindergarten teachers, because we're not going to let robots teach and hold our babies. So, but beyond that, really every job, lawyers, radiologists, pathologists, a lot of really high-skilled jobs might even go away. So those people are even going to need to learn how to retrain and re-educate themselves for the new careers of the future. So with kind of wrapping that up, I think we're going to have a little bit of time for some Q&A. Any questions?
Good morning. My name is Ron Sitola. I'm the Vice Mayor for the town of Indian Head. And one of the concern certainly is education. And I have a family member who is getting ready to go to college. she called 2 weeks ago and she asked me what should be my major when she goes to college. And of course, this is a challenge that we've all faced. And I told her, number one, English, and I don't care about the rest. What you do is the second major, but definitely have the second major that can obviously sustain you. But number one, I said English. Was I wrong? Thank you.
No.
Any thoughts on that?
No, I think, this may sound odd coming from an engineer, but yeah, even engineers need to know English and be able to express themselves in the written word. My only advice to any student like that would be, follow what they're passionate about. That sounds kind of, probably cliche to say that, but that's really what they'll succeed at best. So, but if they're not passionate about anything, then make them an engineer, because engineers can do anything. We all know that.
And I would support that comment. Liberal arts are the foundation of any true educational journey, and complementing that with something that's highly technical, whether it's cybersecurity or management information systems, types of training or business management and support systems around that could be a nice complement. And again, depending on his or her passion and where they desire to be in the future, it's a great start.
And one of the reasons why I told her English was because as a society we have continued to become a very poor storytellers. And we are coming down to bullet points, PowerPoints, and things like that. And we are losing that skill of selling ourselves, telling the real stories. I mean, every product has a story behind it. And if we don't have that ability to succinctly be able to say that story behind that, is going to push us away and away in the capitalism world. And that's what I thought English was so important, to be able to tell your stories.
That's an interesting point that you make on that front. I deal with entrepreneurs all day long and listening to them pitch their ideas. And it's the best storytellers that tend to be the best people who can pitch their ideas. And given the fact that we're going to have an economy that's largely built on entrepreneurship moving forward, that probably does bode well for being able to have that storytelling skill.
Do we have time for one more question?
One more?
One more.
Oh, one down here.
I got you. Oh, thanks. All right, so on the subject of entrepreneurship then, I was wondering if some of the panelists or each of you could go through it and if you had any tips for entrepreneurs specifically in the context of Southern Maryland and Charles County.
I do. Go and visit the Small Business Development Center at the College of Southern Maryland. Mr. Bill Hitty and Ms. Wynn Briscoe, they're both in the audience here today, if you guys would raise your hand. There are federally, state, and local funded resources that are there to support entrepreneurs in their growth, no matter if you're just in a concept phase with an idea, if you actually have a business plan, or if you need help developing that business plan. Those services are there. Consulting services are no cost to you. Training services are at a low cost. If you're interested in doing work with the government, they provide business and technical procurement assistance, and they'll connect you to other very important resources in the community, like the incubator at TechFire and other resources, depending on your business model and your business needs.
Yeah, I was going to say, see me afterwards and we'll chat. But the small business office is a great one to start with, and but then we actually work a little bit more intimately with the companies in terms of really business development and how do you go look at the marketplace and figure out, do you have something that the market really wants. We have lots of engineers and scientists and other people that think they've developed wonderonium, but they haven't gone out and seen if the market wants wonderonium or not. So we help figure that out with them.
And I'll just add, take every opportunity to network. Network. This area, this community, this county is really great as far as individuals and companies being willing to open up and mentor and provide advice and guidance for entrepreneurs. I've seen it, dozens of times where they'll even act as a business coach or a technical coach for startups where the entrepreneurs is showing that initiative.
And I'll go ahead and put in a quick plug for one of TEDCO's programs called the Rural Business Innovation Initiative. And we have rural mentors. The mentor for this county is sitting right back there, Tiffany, raise your hand, Tiffany Davis. So if you've got an idea for a technology startup company, she's the person to see. And with that said, do we have time for any more questions? Or I think that's it. Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity and best of luck.
Obviously, someone tall was standing here last. As we conclude, before we wrap it up, there's been a lot of talk about the College of Southern Maryland directly and indirectly. And I just want to say that, and I'm sure President Murphy will talk more about this later today, but the Aspen Institute College Excellence Program today named the College of Southern Maryland as one of the 150 community colleges eligible to compete for the $1 million Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence, the nation's signature recognition of high achievement and performance among American community colleges. I think we should give the college a big round of applause. And I do want to say that Dr. Murphy has been a partner in economic development with the department. She also sits on our advisory board. And so, Maureen, congratulations. So, with that, I hope that you found today's fall meeting informative. I want to thank our panelists, our moderator. I sincerely want to thank again our sponsors. I want to thank the economic development team, the media team, and more importantly, the entrepreneurs and business folks that are here. Thank you. Again, today is all about you because, as I said earlier, you are our job creators and you're the reasons why we're here. And so thank you. And is there anything else we want to add?
Fill out your surveys.
Oh, well, you tell them that. Go
Well,
ahead.
also, I don't know if, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that this little thing that is on your place setting is actually a flash drive. So you just pull it out and twist it and it plugs in. So be sure to take your flash drive and think about today and fill out our survey because we do want to make sure that we continue to bring information of value to you every year. So thank you all very much for coming.
This concludes the fall meeting. Thank you very much. Have a great day.